Then, we're looking for fresh faces that better represent our brand's youthful energy. Translation: At 39, you're expired. Now, Simone Lambert Ashford stood at the United Nations podium, her 15-month-old daughter asleep against her chest, and told representatives from 193 countries exactly what she thought about expiration dates. But between that rejection email and this moment, a billionaire, a scandal, a documentary, a mass wedding with 500 couples, and a love story that proved everything you've been told about age, worth, and timing is a lie. This is how she got from too old to unstoppable. The rejection email arrived at 3:47 p.m. on a spring afternoon, and Simone Lambert read it 3 times before her hands started shaking. While we appreciate your interest, we're looking for fresh faces that better represent our brand's youthful energy. We've decided to move forward with candidates who align more closely with our target demographic. Fresh faces, youthful energy, target demographic. Every phrase was corporate code for the same brutal truth. At 39, she was too old. Simone closed her laptop and stared out the window of her Charleston apartment, watching palmetto trees sway in the breeze. 20 years. She'd given the fashion industry 20 years of her life, and now they were throwing her away like last season's collection. Her phone buzzed. Her agent, Rita. "Don't tell me you're crying over Luminu," Rita said without preamble. "They're idiots. You're gorgeous. I'm 39. So." Helen Mirren is 78 and still booking campaigns. Helen Mirren is white and already famous. Simone heard the bitterness in her own voice. "Black women age out faster, Rita. You know that. I'm not getting called back because I'm too old at 39, while white models my age are just hitting their stride in mature beauty campaigns." Rita sighed. "I'm not giving up on you, Simone. Neither should you." But after Rita hung up, Simone sat in the silence of her apartment and wondered what giving up looked like. Was it accepting the teaching position at the local community college? Was it finally admitting that her mother had been right, that modeling was a young woman's game and she should have gone to law school? Her phone buzzed again. Her best friend, Tasha. "Girl, emergency wine night? I made your favorite lemon cake." Simone smiled despite herself. "Be there in 30. She changed out of the dress she'd worn for the Zoom callback, the one that Luminu had rejected her in, and pulled on jeans and a soft cotton shirt. No makeup. No performative beauty. Just her, whatever that meant anymore. The drive to Tasha's house in the historic district took 15 minutes. Simone had always loved this part of Charleston, where rainbow row houses lined cobblestone streets and history whispered from every corner. Tasha lived in a renovated carriage house behind one of the grand homes on East Bay Street, a place she'd somehow afforded on a teacher's salary through a mysterious family connection she never quite explained. "You look like hell," Tasha said when she opened the door, pulling Simone into a hug that smelled like vanilla and home. "Thanks. That's exactly what a rejected model wants to hear." Rejected model or woman who's about to realize she's worth more than an industry that treats her like expired milk? Tasha handed her a glass of wine. "Because there's a difference." They settled on Tasha's back porch, where string lights created a warm glow against the darkening sky. The lemon cake sat between them, and for a few minutes, Simone just ate and breathed and tried not to think about the future. "What am I supposed to do now?" she finally asked. "Modeling is all I know. I started at 19. I never finished college. I don't have a backup plan." "You have skills," Tasha said firmly. "You understand fashion, photography, branding, social media. You could consult. You could teach. You could be one of those sad former models who can't let go, or be one of those smart women who pivots into something even better." Tasha refilled their glasses. "Remember when you told me about that photographer who said you had the best eye for composition he'd ever seen? Or when that designer said you understood her vision better than anyone on set?" Simone did remember. She remembered all the moments when people had seen her as more than just a pretty face. She just never believed them. "My mama called yesterday," Simone said quietly. She heard I was up for le menu. Asked if I'd finally gotten it out of my system. Eleanor needs to mind her business. She's not wrong though. She told me 20 years ago that black girls like us don't get to stay in the industry. That we get used up and spit out. Simone's voice cracked. I thought I'd be different. I thought if I worked hard enough, stayed beautiful enough, professional enough. You are all those things. The industry is broken, not you. But Simone wasn't sure she believed that anymore. She'd watched white models transition into their 40s and 50s with grace campaigns and skincare contracts. She'd watched them become timeless and elegant, while women who looked like her just became invisible. I have an interview Monday, Simone said. At the college. Teaching fashion merchandising. That's great. It feels like giving up. It feels like moving forward, Tasha corrected. There's a difference. They talked until midnight, until the wine was gone and the cake was just crumbs. When Simone finally drove home, she felt marginally better, or at least marginally less worse. Her apartment felt empty when she walked in. She'd decorated it carefully over the years, filling it with pieces from her travels, photographs from campaigns, reminders of a life that now felt like it belonged to someone else. Someone younger. Someone who still believed in fairy tales. Simone pulled out her laptop and opened the email from the college. The position started in the fall. Decent pay. Benefits. Stability. Everything her mother had wanted for her. Everything she'd never wanted for herself. But maybe that was the problem. Maybe at 39, it was time to stop chasing the dreams of a 19-year-old girl who thought beauty could save her. She was about to close the laptop when a new email appeared. Subject line, Collaboration Opportunity, Ashford Digital Media. Simone almost deleted it. She'd gotten dozens of scam emails over the years promising opportunities that never materialized. But something made her click. Ms. Lambert. My name is Julian Ashford, founder of Ashford Digital Media. I've been following your career for some time, and I believe you'd be perfect for a project I'm developing. Would you be available for a meeting this week? Best regards, Julian Ashford. Simone Googled the name. Julian Ashford. 39. Tech billionaire who'd sold his first company at 25 and built an empire since then. Ashford Digital Media was his latest venture, something about revolutionizing digital content creation. She stared at his photo. Strong jawline. Kind eyes. The casual confidence of someone who'd never been told no. It was probably nothing. Probably some AI-generated content scheme that would pay her in exposure. But Simone found herself typing a response anyway. Mr. Ashford. I'm available Thursday afternoon. Where would you like to meet? She hit send before she could overthink it, then closed her laptop and went to bed. Outside her window, Charleston slept under a blanket of stars. Somewhere in the city, Julian Ashford was probably still working, building his empire, making decisions that moved markets and changed lives. He had no idea that his email had just given Simone Lambert something she hadn't felt in months. Hope. What would you do if the world told you your time was up? Drop a comment below. Hi my beautiful family. I have missed you all. Thank you so for sticking around with me. I truly appreciate your love and support. If you're already hooked in for today's story and ready to enjoy it, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Because, tomorrow, I will be giving you another story just as interesting as this one. And you don't want to miss it. Now let us begin. Julian Ashford had been awake since 5 a.m., which wasn't unusual. What was unusual was that he'd spent the last 3 hours researching a woman he'd never met instead of preparing for his board meeting. Simone Lambert's portfolio filled his screen. Editorial spreads from Vogue, Harper's Bazaar, Elle. Campaign work for brands that had probably paid her a fraction of what she was worth. But it wasn't just the beauty that caught his attention, though she was stunning, with deep brown skin that seemed to glow from within and eyes that held entire stories. It was the way she moved through each frame. The intelligence behind her gaze. The way she could sell a product without ever looking like she was selling anything at all. Julian had built his fortune by spotting what others missed. Patterns in data. Gaps in markets. Potential where everyone else saw limitations. And when he'd stumbled across Simone's work last month while researching authentic representation in digital media, he'd seen something the fashion industry was apparently too stupid to recognize. She was just getting started. His phone buzzed. His business partner and best friend, Marcus. No, wait. He mentally corrected himself. His business partner, David Chen. Please tell me you're not still obsessing over this model, David said. She's not just a model. She's exactly what we need for the ambassador program. She's also probably going to think you're some creep with a savior complex. Julian winced because David wasn't entirely wrong. His email had been professional, but he knew how it might look. Billionaire swoops in to rescue aging model? The optics were terrible. I'm offering her a legitimate business opportunity, Julian said. Based on what? You've never met her. You don't know if she can handle the role. I know she's been undervalued her entire career. I know she has the presence, the experience, and the perspective we need. And I know that if we don't move fast, she's going to take some teaching job and disappear from the industry entirely. David was quiet for a moment. You read her LinkedIn, didn't you? Maybe. You're a stalker. I'm thorough. Julian closed his laptop. The meeting's Thursday. If she shows up, great. If not, we'll find someone else. But even as he said it, Julian knew there wasn't anyone else. Not for this. He'd spent the last year building Ashford Digital Media with a specific vision, to create content that actually reflected the world as it was, not as advertisers wished it would be. Real people. Real stories. Real representation across age, race, body type, ability. The ambassador program was the cornerstone of that vision. He needed people who'd been marginalized by traditional media, who understood exclusion intimately, who could speak authentically about what it meant to be told you weren't enough. Simone Lambert wasn't just qualified. She was perfect. Thursday morning arrived with the kind of golden Charleston sunshine that made Julian remember why he'd chosen to base his company here instead of Silicon Valley. He'd grown up in Connecticut, built his first company in Boston, but there was something about the South that had called to him. Maybe it was the slower pace. Maybe it was the history. Or maybe it was just that he'd gotten tired of the tech world's obsession with youth. At 39, Julian was considered old in Silicon Valley. Never mind that he'd built 3 successful companies and had more industry connections than most 40-year veterans. The venture capitalists all wanted to fund 22-year-old college dropouts with half-baked ideas, not experienced founders with proven track records. So he'd stopped asking for their money and started using his own. Ashford Digital Media occupied a renovated cotton warehouse in Charleston's Nomo district. Julian had insisted on preserving the building's history while modernizing the interior. Exposed brick walls, original wood beams, floor-to-ceiling windows that flooded the space with natural light. His team of 40 employees had room to spread out, to think, to create without the pressure cooker intensity of traditional tech startups. She's here, his assistant Lauren said at 2:55 p.m. Conference room 2. Julian's heart rate kicked up, which was ridiculous. He'd negotiated million-dollar deals without breaking a sweat. He'd pitched to hostile boards, survived company acquisitions, weathered market crashes. But somehow, meeting Simone Lambert felt more important than any of that. He grabbed the presentation folder and headed to the conference room, then paused outside the door to collect himself. Professional. Respectful. Don't stare. Julian opened the door. Simone sat at the table, and every coherent thought in his head evaporated. She wore a simple white blouse and black pants, minimal jewelry, natural makeup. Nothing flashy. Nothing performative. And she was absolutely breathtaking. Ms. Lambert, he managed. Thank you for coming. She stood, extending her hand. Mr. Ashford. I have to admit, I'm curious what this is about. Her handshake was firm, professional. Her eyes assessed him with the same intensity he'd probably been directing at her. Julian realized with a jolt that she was evaluating whether he was worth her time. He liked that. "Please, sit." Julian took the chair across from her, deliberately choosing not to sit at the head of the table. Equal footing. "I'm sure my email was vague. I apologize for that." "It was intriguing," Simone said carefully. "Though I'll be honest, I almost didn't come. I've gotten a lot of offers over the years that turned out to be less than advertised." "I understand. Let me be direct, then." Julian opened the folder. Ashford Digital Media is launching a new content platform focused on authentic representation. We're building an ambassador program with people who've been marginalized by traditional media. I want you to be our face of age-inclusive beauty. Simone's expression didn't change, but Julian saw something flicker in her eyes. Surprise. Interest. Skepticism. "You want me because I'm old," she said flatly. "I want you because you're brilliant, experienced, and someone the fashion industry has criminally undervalued." Julian leaned forward. "I've studied your work, Ms. Lambert. You're not just a model. You understand composition, branding, storytelling. You know how to connect with a camera in ways that most people never learn. And you've navigated an industry that's tried to erase you for the crime of aging. So this is a pity project. This is a business opportunity." Julian pulled out the contract terms. 1-year commitment. You'd appear in our campaigns, speak at industry events, consult on content creation, and help us build partnerships with brands who want to reach audiences that traditional advertising ignores. Base salary of $300,000, plus performance bonuses that could double that. Simone stared at the numbers. "For what, exactly?" "For being yourself. For sharing your expertise. For proving that the fashion industry's obsession with youth is not just wrong, it's bad business." Julian paused. 54% of women over 35 say they don't see themselves represented in advertising. That's billions of dollars in purchasing power being ignored. I want to change that. Why? Simone's gaze was direct, unflinching. Why do you care? You're a tech billionaire. You could be funding the next social media app or AI company. Why this? Julian had prepared an answer. Something about market opportunity and demographic trends. Something safe and corporate. Instead, he told her the truth. My mother is 66 years old. Last year, she tried to restart her career after my father died. She'd been a marketing executive before she took time off to raise me. Brilliant woman. 3 decades of experience. She couldn't get a callback. His jaw tightened. Every interview, they told her she was overqualified, which is code for too old. They wanted someone with fresh energy. She ended up taking a position 3 levels below where she'd been, making half what she's worth, because it was that or nothing. Simone's expression softened slightly. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Be angry. Julian met her eyes. Because this isn't just about my mother or you. It's about every person who gets thrown away the moment they're no longer considered marketable. And I have the resources to do something about it. The silence stretched between them. Julian forced himself not to fill it, to let Simone process. 300,000, she finally said. Plus bonuses. Plus full benefits, creative input, and final approval on how you're represented. Why that last part? Because I've seen what happens when companies control every aspect of their ambassadors' images. I want authenticity, not another manufactured brand puppet. Simone picked up the contract, flipping through pages. I have questions. Ask anything. For the next hour, they talked. Simone asked smart questions about content strategy, brand partnerships, creative control, termination clauses. She negotiated changes to the contract with the skill of someone who'd learned to protect herself in an industry that didn't protect its workers. Julian found himself genuinely enjoying the conversation. Simone was sharp, funny, occasionally blunt in ways that reminded him why he'd left the corporate world behind. She didn't defer to him because of his wealth or status. She treated him like a business partner, which was exactly what he'd hoped for. "I need to think about it," Simone said finally. "This is a lot." "Of course. Take a week. Talk to your agent, your lawyer, whoever you trust." Julian stood. "But Ms. Lambert? For what it's worth, I think you'd be extraordinary at this." She met his eyes, and Julian felt something shift in the air between them. Not attraction, or not just attraction. Recognition, maybe. The sense that they'd both been fighting the same battles from different sides. "Thank you," Simone said quietly, "for seeing me as more than just a pretty face that's aging out." "I see a brilliant woman who's just getting started," Julian replied. "The fashion industry's loss is my gain." He walked her to the elevator, making small talk about Charleston and the weather and everything except the electric current running between them. When the elevator doors closed on Simone's cautious smile, Julian leaned against the wall and exhaled. David appeared from around the corner. "Well, she's considering it. And I'm in so much trouble," Julian admitted. Because somewhere between the portfolio research and the contract negotiation, he'd stopped seeing Simone Lambert as a business opportunity. He'd started seeing her as a woman he very much wanted to know. "Would you take a chance on someone who saw your potential when everyone else saw your expiration date? Let us know what you'd do." Simone sat in her car outside the Ashford Digital Media building for 20 minutes after the meeting ended, staring at the contract in her hands like it might disappear if she looked away. $300,000. Creative control. Final approval on her image. It was everything she'd never had in 20 years of modeling. Every campaign, every shoot, every brand deal had come with strings attached. Lose 5 pounds. Straighten your hair. Smile more. Look younger. Be grateful we're even considering you. Julian Ashford had offered her respect. And that terrified her more than any rejection ever had. Her phone buzzed. "Tasha, of course. How'd it go? Are you rich yet? Should I start calling you Ms. Ambassador?" Simone smiled despite the anxiety churning in her stomach. She called instead of texting. "Tell me everything," Tasha demanded before Simone could even say hello. "He offered me $300,000 to be the face of age-inclusive beauty." Tasha screamed so loudly that Simone had to pull the phone away from her ear. "I'm sorry, did you just say $300,000? Plus bonuses. Plus benefits. Plus creative control. Girl, if you don't sign that contract right now." "Tasha." Simone's voice cracked. "What if it's too good to be true? What if he's just some rich guy with a savior complex who'll get bored in 6 months? What if I give up the teaching position and this falls apart?" "Or," Tasha said gently, "what if it's exactly what it looks like? A real opportunity with a man who actually values what you bring to the table." "You didn't see him though. The way he looked at me." Simone trailed off, remembering Julian's blue eyes, the intensity of his focus when she spoke. "It felt like he actually saw me. Not the model. Not the face. Me. And that's bad because men who look at you like that want something. Maybe he wants exactly what he said he wants. A brilliant woman to help build something meaningful." Tasha paused. "When do you have to decide?" "He gave me a week. Then use it. Do your research. Talk to Rita. But Simone, don't let fear make you choose safety over possibility." After they hung up, Simone drove to the college where she had her interview scheduled for Monday. She parked across the street and stared at the building. Solid. Stable. Sensible. Everything Julian Ashford's offer wasn't. She went home and spent the evening Googling everything she could find about Ashford Digital Media, Julian's previous companies, his reputation in the tech world. The articles painted a consistent picture. Brilliant, ethical, demanding but fair. Employees praised his leadership. Partners respected his vision. Critics called him naive for prioritizing values over pure profit. But there was almost nothing about his personal life. No scandals. No messy divorces. No pattern of using his wealth to manipulate people. At midnight, Simone opened her laptop and started drafting an email to Rita. Then she stopped, fingers hovering over the keyboard. She knew what Rita would say. Take the deal. It's more money than you've made in the last 3 years combined. She knew what her mother would say. It's too risky. Take the teaching job. Stop chasing fairy tales. But what did Simone want? She closed the laptop and went to bed without sending anything to anyone. Julian couldn't stop thinking about Simone Lambert. This was a problem. He'd built his entire career on discipline and focus. He didn't get distracted. He didn't let emotions cloud his business judgment. He certainly didn't spend hours replaying conversations with potential hires and analyzing the exact shade of skepticism in their eyes. And yet here he was, at 2 a.m. on Friday morning, still awake and thinking about the way Simone had negotiated contract terms with the precision of a chess master. His phone rang. David, because of course it was. Why are you calling me at 2 in the morning? Julian answered. Because I can see your office light from my apartment and I know you're obsessing. I'm not obsessing. You rewrote the entire campaign strategy to center it around her, didn't you? Julian looked at the scattered papers on his desk. That's called being prepared. That's called being interested in more than her professional qualifications. David's voice softened. Jules, when's the last time you went on a date? I don't date. I build companies. You're 39 years old and you've been divorced for 6 years. At some point, you're allowed to want something for yourself. Julian rubbed his eyes. His divorce from Melissa had been amicable, inevitable, and ultimately a relief for both of them. They'd married too young, wanted different things, grown into different people. She was remarried now, living in California, happy in ways she'd never been with him. He'd thrown himself into work and told himself it was enough. This isn't about wanting something for myself, Julian said. This is about building something that matters. It can be both. David paused. Did she seem interested in the job? Maybe. She's being cautious, which is smart. I meant in you. Julian opened his mouth to deny it, then stopped. Because the truth was, he didn't know. Simone had been professional, guarded, occasionally warm but never flirtatious. She'd treated him exactly like what he was, a potential employer offering an opportunity she needed to evaluate carefully. And somehow, that made him want to know her even more. Go home, David, Julian said. Get some sleep. Take your own advice. After David hung up, Julian finally shut down his computer and headed to his apartment in the French Quarter. It was a converted historic building with exposed brick and river views, decorated by a professional because he'd never cared enough to do it himself. Beautiful and soulless, like most of his life outside work. He fell asleep thinking about Simone's cautious smile and woke up Saturday morning with an idea that was either brilliant or completely insane. Simone spent Saturday morning at the farmer's market with Tasha, pretending everything was normal while her mind spun in circles about Julian's offer. You're doing that thing, Tasha said, examining heirloom tomatoes. What thing? That thing where you smile and nod but you're actually somewhere else entirely. Tasha put down the tomatoes and turned to face her. Talk to me. I don't know what to do. Simone's voice dropped. Every rational part of my brain says take the deal. But there's this voice in my head that sounds like my mama, telling me it's too good to be true. Your mama also told you modeling would never work out, and you proved her wrong for 20 years. Until the industry proved her right. The industry is stupid, Tasha said firmly. Julian Ashford is not. Before Simone could respond, her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. But something made her step away from the market crowd and pick up. "Ms. Lambert? This is Julian Ashford." Simone's heart jumped. "Mr. Ashford. Is everything okay with the contract?" "The contract's fine. I'm calling about something else." He sounded nervous, which seemed impossible for a billionaire. "I have a proposition, and I need you to hear me out before you decide I'm completely insane." "Okay." "Tomorrow, I'm flying to New York for a fashion industry panel discussion. Vogue's hosting a conversation about the future of modeling, and they've invited me to talk about digital media's role in representation." He paused. "The panel is supposed to include 4 people. As of this morning, it's just me and 2 executives from agencies that have actively contributed to ageism in the industry." Simone's stomach tightened. What happened to the 4th panelist? "Cancelled last minute. Vogue is scrambling to find a replacement, and they're going to default to another agency executive or a young influencer who'll talk about body positivity while completely ignoring age discrimination." Another pause. "Come with me. Be the 4th panelist." "You can't be serious." "I'm completely serious. Private jet leaves tomorrow at noon. You'd stay at the Mark, all expenses covered. The panel is Monday afternoon, we'd fly back Monday evening. And before you ask, this has nothing to do with the ambassador contract. Whether you take that job or not, I think you have something important to say, and people need to hear it." Simone's mind reeled. "Mr. Ashford. Julian. Please. Julian." His name felt strange on her tongue, too intimate for someone she'd met once. I can't just drop everything and fly to New York." "Why not?" "Because I have responsibilities. I have a life." She stopped, realizing she was about to say she had an interview Monday for a job she didn't even want. "You have a voice that matters," Julian said quietly. "And you have experience that every person on that stage needs to hear. I'm not asking you to do this for me. I'm asking you to do it for every woman who's been told she's expired." Simone looked across the market at Tasha, who was watching her with poorly concealed curiosity. This was insane. Flying to New York on a private jet with a man she barely knew to speak on a panel at Vogue. It was everything her cautious, careful self would normally run from. But maybe Tasha was right. Maybe it was time to stop choosing safety over possibility. "What time did you say the jet leaves?" Simone heard herself ask. "Noon tomorrow. Charleston Executive Airport." "I'll be there." The silence on the other end lasted long enough that Simone wondered if he'd hung up. Then Julian's voice came back, warm with something that sounded like relief. "Thank you, Simone. You won't regret this." After they hung up, Simone walked back to Tasha in a daze. "Who was that?" Tasha demanded. "Julian Ashford just invited me to fly to New York tomorrow to speak on a Vogue panel about ageism in the fashion industry." Tasha's eyes went wide. "And you said?" "I said yes." Simone started laughing, slightly hysterical. "I said yes to flying across the country with a billionaire I met once to tell an entire industry they're wrong about everything." "That's my girl." Tasha grabbed her hands. "Okay, emergency situation. We have 24 hours to get you ready to blow their minds." They spent the rest of Saturday shopping for an outfit powerful enough for the panel, practicing what Simone might say, and generally acting like teenagers before prom. It felt ridiculous and wonderful and terrifying. That night, lying in bed, Simone stared at the ceiling and wondered what she'd just agreed to. Julian Ashford had looked at her and seen potential. He'd offered her not just a job, but a platform. A voice. A chance to fight back against an industry that had tried to silence her. And maybe, just maybe, he'd seen something else too. Something Simone wasn't quite ready to name but couldn't entirely ignore. Her phone buzzed one last time before she fell asleep. A text from an unknown number that could only be Julian. "Thank you for taking a chance. See you tomorrow." Simone saved the number in her contacts and typed a response. "Thank you for asking." See you at noon. Then she added one more line before she could talk herself out of it. This better not be a mistake. His response came immediately. I promise you, it won't be. Simone fell asleep with her phone clutched in her hand and her heart beating faster than it had in years. Tomorrow, she was flying to New York with a billionaire who saw her worth. Tomorrow, she was walking back into the industry that had rejected her. Tomorrow, everything was about to change. Have you ever said yes to something terrifying that turned out to be exactly what you needed? Share your story below. The private jet was nothing like Simone had imagined. She'd expected ostentatious luxury, gold fixtures, leather everything, the kind of wealth that screamed rather than whispered. Instead, the cabin felt like an elegant living room suspended in the sky. Cream-colored seats, warm wood accents, soft lighting that made everything glow. Julian stood as she entered, and Simone's breath caught. He wore dark jeans and a charcoal Henley that somehow made him look more attractive than any suit could have. His hair was slightly messed, like he'd been running his hands through it. When he smiled, it reached his eyes in a way that made Simone's carefully constructed defenses wobble. You came, he said, and there was such genuine relief in his voice that Simone felt something shift in her chest. I said I would. I know. But I was half convinced you'd change your mind. Julian gestured to the seats. Please, sit anywhere. Can I get you something to drink? Coffee, tea, champagne. It's noon. It's a private jet. Time is a social construct. His grin was boyish, unexpected. Also, we're celebrating. Celebrating what? You saying yes. Julian poured 2 glasses of champagne without waiting for her answer. To taking chances on people who see your worth. Simone accepted the glass, their fingers brushing in the exchange. The touch lasted half a second, but left her skin tingling. To not letting fear make all my decisions, she countered, raising her glass. Their eyes met over the champagne, and Simone felt the air between them charged with something she absolutely could not afford to feel for a man who might become her employer. She looked away first, settling into a seat by the window. Julian sat across from her, close enough to talk comfortably but far enough to be respectful. He'd thought about the positioning, she realized. Everything about this man seemed intentional. The jet began to taxi, and Simone watched Charleston shrink below them. Familiar streets became patterns, then disappeared into clouds. Nervous about the panel? Julian asked. Terrified. The honesty surprised her. I haven't spoken publicly about ageism before. I've lived it, but I've never named it. Not out loud. You don't have to do this, Julian said seriously. If you want to turn around right now, I'll tell the pilot. No judgment, no consequences for the ambassador contract. This is your choice. Simone studied him. You really mean that? I never say things I don't mean. Why are you doing this? The question burst out before she could stop it. The ambassador program, this panel, all of it. You could make just as much money doing something else. Something easier. Julian was quiet for a long moment, watching clouds drift past the window. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer than she'd heard it. My father died 5 years ago. Heart attack at 64. He was a corporate attorney, worked 90-hour weeks his entire career, sacrificed everything for success. Julian's jaw tightened. 2 weeks before he died, his firm forced him into early retirement. Said they needed to bring in younger partners, fresh energy. He'd given them 30 years, and they threw him away like he was nothing. Julian. Simone reached out instinctively, her hand covering his. He looked down at their joined hands, then back up at her. He was lost without work. My mom begged him to relax, enjoy retirement, but he didn't know how to be anything except a lawyer. The heart attack happened while he was updating his resume, trying to prove he still had value. Julian's voice roughened. I was in Silicon Valley building my second company, making millions, and I couldn't save him from an industry that decided he was disposable. Simone squeezed his hand, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. So when my mother tried to go back to work and faced the same discrimination, something in me broke, Julian continued. I started researching ageism, discrimination, the ways our entire economy is built on throwing people away the moment they're no longer considered profitable. And I realized I had the resources to do something about it. He turned his hand over, lacing his fingers through hers. That's why I'm doing this. Not because I'm some noble billionaire. Because I'm angry, and I have the means to fight back. That's the most beautiful reason I've ever heard, Simone whispered. Their faces were closer now, though she wasn't sure who had leaned in. Julian's eyes dropped to her lips, then back up, and Simone saw the question there. The want. The hesitation. I should probably let go of your hand, he said quietly. Probably. Neither of them moved. Simone. Her name on his lips felt like a prayer. I need you to know something before we get to New York. Before the panel. Before any of this goes further. What? When I asked you to do this, it was for all the right professional reasons. You're perfect for the ambassador program. Your voice matters. The industry needs to hear what you have to say. He paused. But I'd be lying if I said that was the only reason I wanted you here. Simone's heart hammered against her ribs. Julian, let me finish, please. His thumb traced small circles on the back of her hand. I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since Thursday. The way you challenged me in that conference room. The way you refused to be impressed by money or status. The way you looked at me like I was just a man, not a bank account. Julian's laugh was self-deprecating. I'm doing this very badly. You're doing fine, Simone managed. I don't want you to feel pressured. If you're not interested, we'll never mention this again. The job offer stands regardless. This trip is about the panel, nothing more. Julian met her eyes. But if there's any chance you feel even a fraction of what I'm feeling, I needed you to know. Before we're in New York pretending to be just business associates. Simone couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. Every rational thought in her head screamed that this was complicated, potentially messy, probably a terrible idea. But when she looked at Julian, really looked at him, she didn't see a billionaire or a potential employer. She saw a man who'd been hurt by the same systems that had hurt her. A man who'd turned his pain into purpose. A man looking at her like she was the most interesting person he'd ever met. I feel it, she said. Whatever this is. I feel it too. The smile that broke across Julian's face was incandescent. Yeah. Simone laughed, slightly breathless. Which is probably going to make working together incredibly complicated. Or incredibly amazing. Julian brought their joined hands to his lips, pressing a soft kiss to her knuckles. The gesture was old-fashioned, romantic, and it made Simone's entire body flush with heat. We should probably establish some boundaries, she said, not pulling her hand away. Absolutely. Very professional boundaries. No kissing until after the panel. That's a terrible rule, Julian groaned. It's a necessary rule. I need to focus, and I can't focus if I'm thinking about. Simone trailed off, realizing she'd said too much. Thinking about what? Julian's voice dropped lower, intimate. You know what? Say it anyway. Simone met his eyes, feeling bold. I can't focus if I'm thinking about what it would feel like to kiss you. The temperature in the cabin seemed to rise 10 degrees. You're killing me, Julian said hoarsely. Good. Consider it payback for this entire situation. But Simone was smiling, feeling more alive than she had in years. They spent the rest of the flight talking. Not about work or the panel, but about everything else. Julian told her about growing up in Connecticut, the pressure of being an only child with high-achieving parents, his disastrous first marriage to a woman who'd wanted a lifestyle he couldn't provide while building his first company. Melissa was 24 when we married. I was 26. We thought we had forever. Julian shook his head. But she wanted stability and I wanted to change the world. Those things don't always coexist peacefully. Are you still in touch? Christmas cards. The occasional email. She's happy now, which is all I ever wanted for her. Julian paused. What about you? The Google search was suspiciously quiet about your personal life. You Googled me? Extensively. He didn't look remotely ashamed. But everything was about your career. Nothing about relationships, family, the person behind the portfolio. Simone considered how much to share. I was engaged once. 7 years ago. His name was Terrence. He was a photographer. What happened? He got a job offer in Los Angeles. I was based in New York. We tried long distance for 6 months, and it just faded. Simone looked out the window. The truth is, we weren't right for each other. He loved my image more than he loved me. When I gained 5 pounds or cut my hair or wore the wrong thing, he'd get this look. Disappointment. Like I'd personally betrayed him by being human. Julian's hand tightened on hers. He was an idiot. He was a man who fell in love with a fantasy. Simone turned back to Julian. I swore after that I'd never date anyone in the industry again. Too much pressure to be perfect all the time. I'm technically in the industry now. You're in media. It's different. Simone smiled. You also don't look at me like I'm a doll that might break if I'm not exactly what you expect. You could never be what I expect, Julian said seriously. You're so much more. The jet began its descent into Teterboro, and reality crept back in. In a few hours, they'd be at Vogue, surrounded by the same people who'd rejected Simone. She'd be speaking on a panel about the industry that had chewed her up and spit her out. I'm scared, she admitted. I know. Julian squeezed her hand. But you're also brave. Braver than anyone else who'll be on that stage. How do you know? Because you said yes when you had every reason to say no. Because you're walking back into the fire instead of hiding from it. He smiled. And because you're here with me, which means you take risks on things that matter. The jet touched down smoothly. As they gathered their things, Julian caught Simone's arm gently. Whatever happens tomorrow, whatever they say or do, remember this. You are not the one who should be ashamed. They are. Simone kissed his cheek before she could overthink it. Just a quick press of lips to skin, but Julian's eyes darkened with promise. After the panel, she reminded him. After the panel, he agreed. But Simone. Yeah. That kiss is going to be worth the wait. The limousine to the mark was filled with stolen glances and almost touches. Julian kept a respectful distance, but the space between them hummed with anticipation. At the hotel, they had separate suites on the same floor. Julian walked her to her door, and they stood in the hallway like teenagers after a first date. Dinner tonight? Julian asked. There's a place in the village I think you'd love. Haitian Creole fusion. Best food in the city. You're trying to impress me with food? I'm trying to impress you with everything, Julian said honestly. Is it working? Simone's smile was answer enough. Pick me up at 7. It's a date. It's dinner. It's definitely a date. Julian's grin was infectious. Get some rest. Tomorrow we're going to set the fashion world on fire. After he left, Simone entered her suite and immediately called Tasha. I'm in love, she blurted out the moment Tasha answered. What? Who? How? You've known him for 3 days. I know. This is insane. This is the opposite of everything sensible. Simone laughed, collapsing on the bed. Tasha, he held my hand for 2 hours on the plane. We just talked. And I felt more seen, more valued, more understood than I've felt with anyone in my entire life. Oh honey, Tasha said warmly. You deserve this. You deserve someone who sees all of you and falls anyway. We haven't even kissed yet. Yet is the important word there. After the panel. We agreed. That's the smartest and also dumbest rule I've ever heard, Tasha laughed. Go knock them dead tomorrow. Then kiss that man like your life depends on it. That evening, Julian took her to a small restaurant in the West Village that felt like stepping into someone's home. The owner greeted him by name, and Simone realized he came here regularly. Over plates of griotte and pickles, they talked about everything and nothing. Julian made her laugh with stories about early startup disasters. Simone shared memories of her first modeling gigs, the awkward years before she grew into herself. I was so skinny at 19, she said. All knees and elbows. They kept telling me to smile more, look sexy, be confident. I had no idea what any of that meant. And now I know exactly who I am. Simone met his eyes across the table. That's what makes being told I'm too old so painful. I finally figured out how to be myself, and the industry decided I'm expired. Julian reached across the table, covering her hand with his. Tomorrow, you're going to tell them that's unacceptable. And I'm going to be right there, backing you up every step of the way. They walked back to the hotel through Manhattan streets, and Julian's hand found hers naturally, like they'd been doing this for years instead of hours. At her door, they lingered again. Julian traced her cheekbone with his thumb, his touch feather-light and devastating. After the panel, he murmured. After the panel, Simone agreed, though it took everything in her not to pull him close. But when she finally entered her suite and closed the door, she was smiling. Tomorrow, she'd face the industry that rejected her. But tonight, she'd remember what it felt like to be cherished. When's the last time someone made you feel truly seen? Share your moment below. The Vogue offices occupied an entire floor of One World Trade Center, all glass walls and modern art, and the kind of calculated sophistication that made Simone's stomach clench with old memories. She'd been here before. Years ago, for fittings and castings and meetings where people looked through her instead of at her. Where she'd been measured, evaluated, and often found wanting in ways no one ever quite articulated. Walking back through those doors felt like returning to a battlefield. Julian's hand pressed against the small of her back, steady and reassuring. He'd worn a navy suit today, crisp white shirt, no tie. Professional, but approachable. Everything about his presence said I belong here, and somehow that confidence radiated into Simone. You look stunning, he murmured as they approached the conference room. Simone had chosen her outfit carefully. A deep burgundy suit that hugged her curves, cream silk blouse underneath, her natural hair pulled back in an elegant low bun. She wore minimal makeup, minimal jewelry. This was her at 39, unfiltered and unapologetic. You clean up pretty well yourself, she teased, trying to calm her racing heart. The conference room was already half full. Simone recognized faces immediately. Vanessa Hartley from Elite Model Management, Marcus Chen from IMG, and sitting at the head of the table, Gabrielle Morrison, Vogue's editor-at-large. Gabrielle's eyes widened when she saw Simone. Simone Lambert? My God, I haven't seen you in 3 years, Simone finished smoothly. Since the Lumanu campaign, I was replaced on mid-shoot because they wanted someone younger. The room went silent. Julian's hand moved from her back to her waist, a subtle gesture of solidarity. Ms. Lambert graciously agreed to join the panel when your fourth speaker cancelled. I hope that's acceptable. Gabrielle recovered quickly. Of course. We're thrilled to have you. Please, both of you, sit. The next hour was brutal. Vanessa talked about refreshing their roster and staying current with trends. Marcus discussed brand alignment and demographic targeting. Both of them spoke in careful corporate language that never quite acknowledged what they were actually saying. Older models weren't profitable enough to bother with. Julian listened, his expression neutral but his hand never leaving Simone's beneath the table. Every few minutes, he'd squeeze gently, reminding her he was there. When Gabrielle finally turned to Simone, the entire room shifted. Simone, you've had a remarkable career. 20 years in the industry. What's your perspective on the changing landscape of fashion? Simone took a breath. This was it. The moment she either spoke her truth or played it safe. She felt Julian's hand squeeze once more, then release, giving her space to fly. My perspective, Simone said clearly, is that the fashion industry has a terminal disease, and it's called disposability. Vanessa's smile froze. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. Simone continued. I've worked with the biggest brands in the world. I've been on magazine covers, walked runways, represented companies that made billions from my image. And the moment I turned 35, everything changed. Not because my work wasn't good. Not because I couldn't book jobs. But because someone decided I had an expiration date. The industry is youth-focused, Marcus interjected. That's always been discrimination, Simone cut him off. Let's call it what it is. You wouldn't tell a black model you only wanted white faces and claim it's just brand preference. You wouldn't tell a plus-size model you only hire thin bodies and call it market research. But somehow, telling women they're too old at 35 is acceptable. It's about relevance, Vanessa said carefully. Younger models connect with younger audiences. Really? Julian spoke for the first time, his voice calm but edged with steel. Because Ashford Digital Media's research shows that women over 35 control 85% of household purchasing decisions. They're the ones actually buying your products. But you're marketing exclusively to teenagers who have no money and young adults who are drowning in student debt. He leaned forward. You're not just being discriminatory. You're being stupid. The room erupted. Gabrielle tried to moderate, but Marcus and Vanessa were defensive, talking over each other about industry standards and market forces. Julian countered with data, facts, research. And Simone just sat there, watching the industry that had rejected her scramble to justify why. I got an email 2 weeks ago, Simone said quietly, and somehow her voice cut through the chaos. Everyone stopped talking. From Lumenu, the brand that replaced me 3 years ago. They wanted to know if I'd be interested in their new, mature beauty line. She laughed bitterly. They rejected me at 36 for being too old. Now at 39, they think I'm perfect for their brand, targeting women over 40. That sounds like they're correcting course, Gabrielle offered. That sounds like they want to profit from the same women they've been excluding for years, Simone countered. And they want to use me to do it. They want me to smile and be grateful and tell those women that Lumenu has always valued them. But that would be a lie. So what's the solution? Marcus asked, and he sounded genuinely curious now, less defensive. Simone looked at Julian. He nodded, encouraging. The solution is to stop treating human beings like products with sell-by dates, Simone said. It's to recognize that beauty, talent, and value don't expire at 35. It's to build campaigns that reflect how women actually look at every age instead of selling them a fantasy of eternal youth they'll never achieve. She paused. And it's to hire people like me, people who've been excluded, to help reshape an industry that's been broken for decades. Julian's smile was proud, warm, everything. The panel continued for another 30 minutes, but something had shifted. Vanessa and Marcus asked questions instead of defending. Gabrielle took notes. And Simone felt something she hadn't felt in years. Powerful. When it finally ended, people lingered, wanting to talk to Simone, asking about her perspective, requesting follow-up conversations. Julian stayed close but let her shine, his presence steady and supportive without overshadowing. Gabrielle pulled Simone aside as the room emptied. That was extraordinary. I'd love to do a feature on you. Your story, your perspective on ageism, what you're doing next. I'll have my agent send you my information, Simone said professionally. Simone. Gabrielle's voice dropped. I'm sorry. For whatever role Vogue played in making you feel disposable. We can do better. We should do better. It wasn't absolution. But it was acknowledgement, and that meant something. Outside the Vogue offices, Julian and Simone stood on the street, adrenaline still pumping through their veins. You were incredible in there, Julian said, his eyes bright with admiration. Absolutely fearless. I was terrified. That's what made it brave. He tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear, his touch lingering. Simone Lambert, you just changed the conversation around ageism in fashion. Do you understand that? I just said what needed to be said. You did more than that. You named the problem. You called out the hypocrisy. You offered solutions. Julian's hand cupped her cheek. You were magnificent. They were standing too close, in the middle of a Manhattan sidewalk with people rushing past them. Simone didn't care. The panel's over, she whispered. Julian's eyes darkened with understanding. It is. So that rule about not kissing officially expired. His thumb traced her lower lip. Simone, I'm about to kiss you, and I need you to know it has nothing to do with business or contracts or anything except the fact that I haven't been able to think about anything else for days. Then stop talking and kiss me already. Julian laughed, and then his mouth was on hers. The kiss started soft, tentative, a question being asked and answered. But within seconds, it deepened into something that made Simone's knees weak and her heart race. Julian's hands slid into her hair, careful not to mess up her bun but holding her like she was precious. His lips moved against hers with a perfect combination of gentleness and hunger that made her forget they were standing on a public street. Simone's hands fisted in his suit jacket, pulling him closer. She poured everything into the kiss, the fear she'd felt walking into Vogue, the triumph of speaking her truth, the overwhelming feeling of being seen and valued by this man who'd crashed into her life less than a week ago. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Julian rested his forehead against hers. Wow, he breathed. Yeah, Simone agreed shakily. Wow. I need to kiss you again. We're in public. I don't care. And he proved it, capturing her lips once more in a kiss that felt like a promise. A passing group of tourists whistled and cheered. Julian pulled back, laughing, his face flushed and his eyes impossibly bright. Come on, he said, lacing his fingers through hers. Let's get out of here. They walked through Manhattan hand in hand, not really going anywhere, just being together. They ended up in Central Park, finding a bench near Bethesda Fountain where they could watch the world go by. I want to take the job, Simone said suddenly. The ambassador program. I want to do it. Julian turned to face her fully. Are you sure? Because if this, he gestured between them, is complicating your decision. This is clarifying my decision. Simone squeezed his hand. Julian, you helped me remember who I am. You gave me back my voice. Whether we're together or not, I want to be part of what you're building. We're definitely going to be together, Julian said firmly. Just so that's clear. Simone laughed. Pretty confident. I'm confident about us. About this. He brought her hand to his lips, kissing her knuckles. Simone, I know this is fast. I know we should probably take things slow and be sensible and all those other things people do when they're starting something new. But I can't remember the last time I felt this alive. This certain about anything. Julian's voice was raw with honesty. When I'm with you, everything makes sense. The work I'm doing, the company I'm building, the life I want to live. You make it all clearer. Simone's eyes filled with tears. I feel the same way. And it terrifies me. Why? Because what if it doesn't last? What if we're just caught up in the romance of it all, and in 6 months we realize we made a mistake? Julian was quiet for a moment, considering. Then he said, what if it does last? What if 6 months from now, we're even more certain? What if a year from now, I'm sitting across from you at breakfast wondering how I ever lived without you? That's a beautiful thought. Then let's choose to believe in the beautiful thought instead of the fearful one. He kissed her softly. I'm not saying it'll be easy. We'll have to navigate the professional relationship carefully. There'll be people who question whether you earned your position or if you're just my girlfriend. Future people who question that will get educated very quickly, Simone said fiercely. Julian grinned. There she is. That's the woman who just destroyed 2 agency executives with facts and passion. They stayed in the park until the sun started to set, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Julian told her about his vision for Ashford Digital Media, the campaigns he wanted to build, the voices he wanted to amplify. Simone shared her ideas for the ambassador program, ways to connect with audiences that traditional advertising ignored. We're going to change things, Julian said with quiet conviction. Together. Together, Simone echoed. As evening fell, they walked back to the mark, stopping every few blocks to kiss like teenagers who'd just discovered what lips were for. By the time they reached the hotel, Simone's carefully styled bun had come loose and Julian's tie was completely undone despite him not wearing one. At her sweet door, they lingered again. But this time, the tension was different. Charged with possibility and the knowledge that nothing was stopping them anymore. Come in, Simone said softly. Just to talk. Just to be together a little longer. Julian searched her face. Are you sure? I'm sure about you. That's all I need to be sure about right now. Inside the suite, they kicked off their shoes and settled on the couch. Julian pulled Simone against his chest, and she melted into him, feeling safe and cherished and completely herself. Tell me about your family, Julian said, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her arm. I want to know everything. So Simone told him. About growing up in Atlanta, the daughter of teachers who'd sacrificed everything to give her opportunities. About her mother Eleanor, who'd been beautiful and intelligent and had given up her own dreams to raise a family. About the complicated relationship they had, built on love and resentment in equal measure. Mama wanted me to be a lawyer, Simone said. Like her father. Stable, respectable, safe. When I said I wanted to model, she told me I was wasting my beauty on an industry that would chew me up and spit me out. She wasn't entirely wrong, Julian observed gently. No. But she also didn't understand that modeling gave me freedom. Independence. A way to see the world and define success on my own terms. Simone paused. I think I spent 20 years trying to prove her wrong. And now I'm 39, and part of me wonders if she was right all along. Julian tilted her chin up, so she had to look at him. Your mother was right that the industry is broken. But she was wrong about you wasting anything. You built a career. You created art. You inspired people. That's not wasted, Simone. That's valuable. How are you always so sure? Because I see you clearly. He kissed her forehead. And what I see is extraordinary. They talked until midnight, sharing stories and dreams and fears. Julian told her about the pressure of being seen as a golden boy in tech, always expected to succeed, never allowed to fail. Simone shared her insecurities about being perceived as just a pretty face, never smart enough or serious enough. We're both fighting to be seen as whole people, Julian realized. You're too much of one thing, I'm too much of another. Maybe that's why this works. Because we see each other's completeness? Exactly. Eventually, exhaustion caught up with them. Julian started to leave, but Simone caught his hand. Stay, she whispered. Just to sleep. I just want to wake up knowing you're here. So Julian stayed, and they fell asleep tangled together on the couch, fully clothed and completely content. When Simone woke the next morning to sunlight streaming through the windows and Julian's arms still around her, she felt something she'd thought was lost forever. Hope. Joy. The certainty that her best days weren't behind her. They were just beginning. When was the last time someone made you feel like your best days were still ahead? Tell us in the comments. The flight back to Charleston should have been perfect. Simone had signed the ambassador contract that morning over room service breakfast, Julian's lawyers having worked through the night to finalize every detail she'd requested. They'd kissed on the tarmac before boarding, laughing at their own inability to stop touching each other. But 20 minutes into the flight, Julian's phone rang. He glanced at the screen, and Simone watched his entire body tense. I need to take this, he said apologetically. It's my mother. He stepped toward the back of the cabin, but the jet was small enough that Simone could hear fragments of conversation. Mom, slow down. What do you mean she's at the house? No, absolutely not. I don't care what she said. Because that part of my life is over. When Julian returned, his jaw was tight and the easy warmth from earlier had vanished. Everything okay? Simone asked carefully. My ex-wife is in Charleston. Julian rubbed his face. Melissa. She showed up at my mother's house this morning, apparently having some kind of crisis. Mom wants me to talk to her. Simone's stomach dropped, but she kept her voice neutral. Do you need to? No. Yes. I don't know. Julian sat down heavily. Melissa and I have been divorced for 6 years. We're friendly but not close. For her to fly across the country unannounced. He shook his head. Something's wrong. Then you should see her, Simone said, meaning it even as anxiety coiled in her chest. Make sure she's okay. Julian took her hand. This doesn't change anything between us. I know. But even as Simone said it, she wondered if she believed it. They landed in Charleston to gray skies and the promise of rain. Julian's driver was waiting, and the plan had been to take Simone home before Julian headed to his office. Instead, Julian turned to her with apology written across his face. Would you hate me if I went to see Melissa first? Just to make sure she's not in actual crisis. Of course not. Simone squeezed his hand. Go. We can celebrate the contract tonight. But as she watched Julian's car drive away, Simone felt the first fingers of doubt creep in. She'd been here before, the new woman, the exciting possibility, right until the ex-girlfriend or ex-wife reappeared and suddenly she was the complication instead of the prize. Her phone rang. Tasha. How'd it go? Are you officially rich and employed? Contracts signed. Simone tried to inject enthusiasm into her voice. And I kissed Julian. A lot. What? Girl, you buried the lead. Tell me everything. Simone recounted the panel, the kiss, the night talking until dawn. But when she got to Melissa showing up, Tasha's excitement dimmed. His ex-wife, who's apparently in crisis. And he went to see her. What else was he supposed to do, Tasha? Ignore her. No, but... Tasha sighed. Just be careful, okay? Men say they're over their exes all the time. Until those exes need something. After they hung up, Simone paced her apartment, trying to quiet the anxious voices in her head. She trusted Julian. She did. But she also knew that emotions were complicated, and history had weight, and sometimes the person you thought you were over could pull you back just by showing up. Her phone buzzed with a text from Julian. Crisis averted. Melissa's okay, just going through some stuff. Dinner at 7? I'm making reservations at Husk. Simone stared at the message. Just going through some stuff told her exactly nothing. But she also recognized that Julian didn't owe her a detailed explanation about his ex-wife's problems. Sounds perfect. See you at 7. She spent the afternoon trying to work, reviewing the ambassador contract, sketching out campaign ideas, anything to keep busy. But her mind kept drifting to Julian and Melissa, wondering what kind of crisis would make someone fly across the country to their ex-husband. At 6:30, her doorbell rang. Too early for Julian. Simone opened the door to find her mother standing there, suitcase in hand. Mama? What are you doing here? Eleanor Lambert swept past her daughter into the apartment with the kind of dramatic flair that had always made Simone feel like a supporting character in her mother's story. I'm staying with you for a few days. Your cousin Angela is driving me crazy with this wedding planning, and I needed an escape. Eleanor dropped her suitcase and turned to examine Simone. You look different. What happened? Nothing happened. I just got back from New York. New York. Eleanor's eyebrows rose. For what? And because the day was already complicated enough, Simone found herself telling her mother everything. The rejection from Le Menu, Julian's offer, the panel at Vogue, the ambassador contract. Eleanor listened without interrupting, which was notable in itself. When Simone finished, her mother was quiet for a long moment. How much is he paying you? Mama. I'm serious. How much? 300,000 base, plus bonuses. Eleanor sat down on the couch like her legs had given out. $300,000. Plus bonuses, Simone repeated. To do what, exactly? Be the face of age-inclusive beauty. Speak at events. Consult on campaigns. Help reshape how the industry thinks about aging. And you trust this man? This Julian Ashford. Simone thought about Julian's hands in her hair, his voice saying you were magnificent, the way he'd looked at her like she was the most important person in the world. Yes, she said simply. I trust him. Eleanor studied her daughter with a kind of penetrating gaze that had always been able to see through Simone's defenses. You're sleeping with him. Mama. Am I wrong? We haven't, that's not. Simone felt her face heat. We kissed. That's it. So far. Eleanor shook her head. Baby, I'm not judging. I'm just worried. You don't think it's convenient that this rich white man shows up right when your career is falling apart, offering you everything you've ever wanted? It's not like that. It's always like that. Eleanor's voice softened. Simone, I love you. I want you to be happy. But I also remember how hard you fell for Terrence, how devastated you were when it ended. This man has even more power over you than Terrence did. He's your employer now. What happens when the honeymoon phase ends? Simone's phone buzzed. Julian. On my way. Can't wait to see you. I have a date, Simone said. Dinner at 7. With Julian? Yes. Eleanor sighed but didn't argue. Go. Have dinner. Just promise me you'll be careful with your heart. I'm 39, Mama. I know how to protect myself. That's what every woman thinks right before she falls. Eleanor squeezed her daughter's hand. But go. Have fun. I'll be here when you get back, and you can tell me all about how wrong I am. Julian arrived at exactly 7, dressed in dark jeans and a gray button-down that made his eyes look like storm clouds. He kissed Simone on her doorstep, sweet and lingering, and she felt some of her earlier anxiety melt away. You look beautiful, he murmured against her lips. You look distracted. Julian pulled back, studying her face. I'm sorry. Today got complicated. Want to talk about it? They walked to his car, a sleek black Tesla that was somehow both understated and screaming wealth. Julian opened her door. Always the gentleman, before getting in himself. Melissa's getting divorced, he said once they were driving. Her husband cheated. She's devastated and apparently decided I was the person she needed to talk to about it. Why you? Because I'm the one who didn't cheat. Who didn't lie. Julian's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Our marriage ended because we wanted different things, but we were honest about it. She said I was the only man she could trust right now. Simone processed this. How do you feel about it? Honestly, bad for her. Marriage ending because of infidelity is brutal. He glanced at Simone. But I also feel annoyed that she showed up unannounced, dragging my mother into her crisis. And guilty for feeling annoyed because she's clearly suffering. That's a lot of feelings. Welcome to my brain. Julian pulled into the parking lot at Husk, but didn't immediately get out. Instead, he turned to face Simone fully. I need you to know something. Whatever I felt for Melissa died years ago. Seeing her today was like visiting a museum. Interesting, vaguely nostalgic, but not somewhere I want to live. Okay. You don't sound convinced. Simone chose her words carefully. My mother showed up right after you left. She's staying with me for a few days. Julian's eyes widened. The mother who wanted you to be a lawyer? That's the one. And she had some opinions about rich white men who offer struggling black women suspiciously perfect opportunities. Ouch. Her words were actually less diplomatic than that. Simone laughed despite herself. Julian, we've known each other less than a week. We're starting a business relationship and a romantic relationship simultaneously. Your ex-wife just crashed back into your life, and my mother is currently unpacking in my guest room with judgmental commentary locked and loaded. This is a lot. It is a lot, Julian agreed. He took her hand. So let's make a deal. Complete honesty, even when it's uncomfortable. If something's bothering you, you tell me. If I'm feeling overwhelmed, I tell you. We don't let things fester. That's a good deal. And Simone, the thing that's bothering me right now is that I haven't properly kissed you in hours, and that feels like a crime. She laughed, and Julian leaned across the console to remedy the situation. The kiss started playful but deepened into something that made Simone forget they were in a parking lot. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Julian rested his forehead against hers. I'm falling for you, he whispered. Fast and hard and in ways that probably aren't sensible. But I need you to know it's real. I'm falling too, Simone admitted. And it terrifies me. Good. Let's be terrified together. Dinner at Husk was perfect. They sat at a corner table and ordered half the menu because they couldn't decide what they wanted. Julian told her about Melissa's visit with more detail, how she'd cried about her failed marriage, asked if he thought she'd made a mistake divorcing him, then immediately answered her own question with no. She doesn't want me back, Julian said, twirling pasta on his fork. She wants the version of me who existed when we were 26. Before the companies and the money and the complications. Don't we all wish we could go back sometimes? Simone mused. To when things felt simpler? Do you want to go back? Simone thought about 19-year-old her, stepping off the bus in New York with a duffel bag and dreams. That girl had been so sure of everything, so convinced that beauty would be enough. No, she said finally. That girl didn't know who she was yet. I do now. And who are you, Simone Lambert? She met his eyes across the table. I'm a woman who spent 20 years proving her worth to an industry that never valued her. And I'm about to spend the next chapter proving that their loss is someone else's gain. Julian's smile was incandescent. I love that answer. I love. He stopped abruptly. The air between them charged with a word he hadn't said. You were going to say something else, Simone said softly. I was going to say something way too soon. Julian's ears were red. Something that would probably freak you out. Try me. Simone, I've been divorced for 6 years. I've dated other women. Smart, beautiful, interesting women. And none of them made me feel a fraction of what I feel when I'm with you. He reached across the table, taking her hand. I know it's only been a week. I know that by any rational measure, this is too fast. But when you know, you know. And I know. Simone's heart hammered in her chest. She could deflect, make a joke, protect herself from the vulnerability of this moment. Or she could be brave. I know too, she whispered. And it scares me to death. Why? Because everything good in my life has always come with an expiration date. My modeling career. My relationships. Even my own face, apparently. Her voice cracked. What if we have an expiration date too? Julian stood up, came around the table, and pulled her to her feet. Right there in the restaurant, with other diners watching, he cupped her face in his hands. Then we'll have the best damn time until it expires, he said fiercely. But Simone, I don't think we do. I think we're just getting started. And I think if you're brave enough to take a chance on this, on us, you'll look back in 50 years and remember this as the night everything changed. 50 years. She was crying now, laughing through the tears. That's a long time. Not long enough. Julian kissed her, sweet and sure. Not nearly long enough. When they finally left the restaurant, the rain that had been threatening all day finally began to fall. They ran to the car laughing, getting soaked in the process. Julian drove her home, and at her door, they kissed like teenagers, unable to say goodbye. "Your mother's inside," Julian reminded her when they finally came up for air. "Unfortunately. Want me to come in?" Face the judgment head-on. Simone considered it. "Not tonight. Tonight, I want to go to bed thinking about this." She kissed him again, "and not about my mother's opinions on my life choices." "Fair enough." Julian traced her cheekbone. "Tomorrow, I want to show you the office. Introduce you to the team. Start planning campaigns. Back to business. Business and pleasure. I'm a multitasker." His grin was infectious. "Good night, Simone Lambert. Dream of me." "Arrogant. Confident," he corrected, kissing her one last time before heading to his car. Inside, Eleanor was waiting up, pretending to watch TV but clearly dying for details. "How was dinner?" she asked innocently. "Nice," Simone said, trying not to smile too much. "Just nice. Mama, I'm not doing this right now." "He told you he loves you, didn't he?" Simone froze. "What? Baby, you're glowing. That's not just a nice dinner glow. That's a man told you something significant and you believed him glow." Eleanor patted the couch next to her. "Sit. Talk to your mama." And because the day had been long and emotional and wonderful, Simone sat. She told her mother about Julian's almost confession, about his promise of 50 years, about feeling terrified and exhilarated in equal measure. Eleanor listened, really listened, in a way she rarely did. When Simone finished, her mother was quiet for a long moment. "Your father told me he loved me on our third date," Eleanor finally said. "I thought he was crazy. We barely knew each other. But he was so sure, Simone. He looked at me like I was the answer to every question he'd never thought to ask." "What did you say?" "I told him he was insane and I'd see him Friday." Eleanor smiled at the memory. "But I knew. Right then, I knew he was the one. And I was terrified because knowing something doesn't make it safe. It just makes it real. I didn't know you felt that way about Daddy. I loved your father more than I've ever loved anything except you. That's why losing him nearly destroyed me." Eleanor took her daughter's hand. "But Simone, I wouldn't trade those 32 years for anything. Not the safety of never loving him. Not the protection of holding back. Love is worth the risk. It's always worth the risk." Simone felt tears slide down her cheeks. "I'm scared, Mama." "Good. That means it matters." Eleanor pulled her daughter into a hug. "Now tell me more about this Julian Ashford. And don't leave out any details." They talked until 2 in the morning, mother and daughter, sharing stories and fears and hopes. And when Simone finally fell asleep in her own bed, she dreamed not of expiration dates and endings, but of 50 years and new beginnings. What would you risk for a love that felt this real? Tell us in the comments. The call came at 4:17 a.m., 3 weeks after Simone had signed the contract. She'd been dreaming of Julian, they'd been dancing in the rain, laughing, his arms around her waist, when her phone shattered the moment with its piercing ring. "Hello." Her voice was thick with sleep. "Simone." It was her cousin Angela, and she was crying. "It's your mama. She collapsed. We're at MUSC. You need to come now." The world tilted sideways. Simone was in her car within 5 minutes, still in pajama pants and one of Julian's sweatshirts he'd left at her place. Her hands shook on the steering wheel as she drove through empty Charleston streets, her mind refusing to process what Angela had said. Collapsed. Hospital. Come now. Her mother had seemed fine yesterday. They'd had lunch together, argued about whether Simone was spending too much time with Julian, laughed over old photos. Eleanor had been vibrant, healthy, completely herself. The hospital emergency room was too bright, too sterile, too real. Angela met her at the doors, Mascara streaked down her face. "She's stable," Angela said immediately. "But Simone, it's bad. It's her heart." The next hours passed in a blur of doctors and tests and medical terminology that Simone couldn't quite grasp. Congestive heart failure. Cardiomyopathy. Words that meant her mother's heart was literally failing, had been failing for months apparently, and Eleanor had hidden it from everyone. "Why didn't she tell me?" Simone asked the cardiologist, a kind-faced woman named Dr. Patel. "She probably didn't want to worry you." Many patients in denial about heart issues minimize symptoms until it becomes critical. Dr. Patel pulled up charts on her tablet. "Your mother's been experiencing shortness of breath, fatigue, chest pain. She attributed it to getting older, stress. But her heart has been struggling for some time. Can you fix it? We're doing everything we can. She needs to stay hospitalized for monitoring. We're adjusting her medications, running more tests. The next 48 hours are critical." Critical. That word again. Everything was critical suddenly. Simone was finally allowed to see her mother around 7 a.m. Eleanor looked small in the hospital bed, IVs running into both arms, monitors beeping steadily. Her eyes were closed, and for one heart-stopping moment, Simone thought. "I'm awake, baby," Eleanor said without opening her eyes. "Just resting." Simone pulled a chair close, taking her mother's hand carefully, mindful of the four. "Mama, why didn't you tell me?" "Tell you what?" "That my heart is tired." Eleanor opened her eyes, and they were clearer than Simone expected. "What were you going to do about it?" "I could have helped. Made you see a doctor sooner. Something. You had enough on your plate. Your career falling apart, that man complicating everything. Don't you dare blame Julian for this." "I'm not blaming anyone, baby. I'm just saying life has a way of piling things on all at once." Eleanor squeezed Simone's hand weakly. "How is Julian, anyway? Still treating you right?" "Mama, we're not talking about my boyfriend while you're in a hospital bed." "Why not? I might not get another chance." "Don't say that." Simone's voice broke. "Don't you dare say that." Eleanor's expression softened. "Oh, sweetheart. Come here." Simone carefully climbed onto the edge of the bed, laying her head on her mother's shoulder like she used to do as a child. Eleanor's hand stroked her hair, the gesture so familiar it made Simone's chest ache. "I'm not going anywhere yet," Eleanor murmured. "But Simone, we need to talk about some things. Just in case." "No. We're not doing this." "Yes, we are. Because I have things I need to say, and you're going to listen." Eleanor's voice was firm despite her exhaustion. "I was wrong about your modeling career. I was so scared you'd get hurt that I couldn't see how much strength it took to do what you did. 20 years in an industry that tried to break you, and you never let it. I'm proud of you, baby. I should have said that more." Tears streamed down Simone's face. "Mama. I'm not finished. I was also wrong about Julian. Any man who looks at my daughter the way that man looks at you is either genuinely in love or the world's best actor. And I don't think he's acting." Eleanor paused to catch her breath. "Don't let fear keep you from being happy. I let fear guide too many of my choices after your father died. Don't make the same mistake." "I need you to be okay," Simone whispered. "I'm not ready to do this without you. You're 39 years old, successful, in love with a good man. You're more than ready." Eleanor kissed the top of her head. "But I'm not planning on leaving anytime soon. Someone has to keep you from making terrible decisions." They stayed like that until a nurse came to run more tests. Simone stepped into the hallway, and that's when she finally let herself fall apart. She slid down the wall, sobbing into her hands, her whole body shaking with the terror of almost losing her mother. Her phone buzzed. Julian. She'd forgotten to call him. "Hey, I was just thinking about you." His voice was warm, intimate. "Want to grab breakfast before you come to the office?" I found this place that makes the best. Simone? Are you crying? I'm at the hospital. The words came out strangled. My mama collapsed. Her heart is failing and I didn't know and she might. She couldn't finish the sentence. I'm on my way. Which hospital? Julian, you don't have to. Which hospital, Simone? Musk. Emergency wing. 10 minutes. Stay on the phone with me. And he did. Julian stayed on the phone while he got dressed, got in his car, drove through morning traffic. He talked to her about nothing important, the weather, a funny email David had sent, a cat he'd seen on his morning run. Anything to keep her grounded, to remind her she wasn't alone. When he arrived, still in sweatpants and a rumpled t-shirt, hair uncombed, Simone fell into his arms and let herself break completely. Julian held her while she cried, his hand rubbing circles on her back, his voice murmuring comfort against her hair. He didn't tell her everything would be okay. He didn't offer empty platitudes. He just held her while she shattered. I can't lose her, Simone gasped between sobs. Julian, I can't. She drives me crazy and she's judgmental and she never believed in my career, but she's my mama. She's all I have left. I know, sweetheart. I know. Julian pulled back just enough to cup her face, wiping tears with his thumbs. What did the doctors say? Simone filled him in on everything, the heart failure, the medications, the critical 48 hours. Julian listened intently, asking clarifying questions, processing information the way he processed everything. Okay, he said finally. Here's what we're going to do. You're staying here as long as you need to. I'm canceling all your appearances this week. Julian, the campaign launch can wait. Simone, your mother is in the hospital. Everything else is secondary. He pulled out his phone. I'm also calling Dr. Richardson. He's the top cardiac specialist on the East Coast. I met him at a fundraiser last year. If your mom needs a second opinion or better care. We can't afford that kind of specialist. Julian looked at her like she'd spoken a foreign language. I can. And I am. Your mother is important to you, which makes her important to me. Julian, that's too much. Simone. He took her hands. Let me help. Please. I have resources, connections, money sitting in accounts doing nothing. Let me use it for something that actually matters. She wanted to argue. Wanted to say she could handle this herself, didn't need his charity, was perfectly capable of managing her mother's care. But the truth was, she was terrified and exhausted and grateful beyond words that he was here. Okay, she whispered. Thank you. Dr. Richardson arrived within 2 hours, somehow clearing his schedule to consult. He spent an hour reviewing Eleanor's charts, examining her, asking questions. When he emerged, his expression was serious but not devastated. Your mother's condition is serious, but treatable, he told Simone and Julian. She'll need medication adjustments, lifestyle changes, close monitoring. But with proper care, she can live a good quality life for many years. She's not dying. Simone's voice was small, afraid to hope. Not anytime soon, if we do this right. Dr. Richardson smiled. She's stubborn, which honestly works in her favor with heart conditions. Stubborn people fight harder. After he left to coordinate with Dr. Patel, Simone turned to Julian. He was leaning against the wall, looking exhausted, and she realized he'd probably been up since she called. You didn't have to do all this, she said. Yes, I did. Julian pulled her close. Simone, when you hurt, I hurt. When you're scared, I'm scared. That's what this is. That's what we are. We've only known each other a month. Feels like longer. Feels like forever. He kissed her forehead. I love you. I probably should have waited to say that, picked a better moment, but I love you and I need you to know it. Simone pulled back to look at him, this man who'd crashed into her life and changed everything. His eyes were red-rimmed with exhaustion, his hair was a mess, he was wearing mismatched socks. and he was perfect. I love you too, she said, the words both terrifying and liberating. I think I've loved you since you first said my name. Julian's smile was incandescent despite his exhaustion. Yeah. She kissed him softly. Thank you for being here. For calling Dr. Richardson. For everything. Always. He pulled her against his chest. That's what love means, Simone. It means showing up. It means using whatever resources you have to protect the people you care about. It means... Excuse me. They both turned to find Eleanor's nurse, looking amused. Ms. Lambert, your mother is asking for you. And apparently for that boy who's got money and no sense. Julian laughed. That's definitely me. Eleanor was sitting up when they entered, looking more like herself despite the hospital equipment. Her eyes sharpened when she saw Julian. You called in a specialist, she said. Not a question. Yes, ma'am. Julian didn't apologize, didn't make excuses. That's expensive. It's necessary. Boy, I don't need your charity. It's not charity, Ms. Lambert. It's love. Julian's voice was firm but respectful. I love your daughter. That means I care about the people she loves. You raised an extraordinary woman, and I'd like you around to see all the extraordinary things she's about to do. Eleanor studied him for a long moment. Then she held out her hand. Come here. Julian approached the bed cautiously. Eleanor grabbed his hand with surprising strength for someone supposedly at death's door. You hurt my baby, and heart failure won't be what kills me. I'll live long enough to make your life hell. Understand? Yes, ma'am. Good. Now kiss her. She's been crying, and that boy of mine needs comforting. Simone felt her face heat. Mama. I'm in a hospital bed, Simone. I get to say whatever I want. But Eleanor was smiling, and there was approval in her eyes when she looked at Julian. They stayed at the hospital all day. Julian made calls, rearranged his entire schedule, brought food when he realized Simone hadn't eaten. He charmed the nurses, discussed treatment plans with doctors, and never once made Simone feel like she was being a burden. That evening, when Eleanor was sleeping peacefully and the crisis had truly passed, they sat in the hospital cafeteria drinking terrible coffee. I meant what I said earlier, Julian said quietly. I love you. And not because of some dramatic hospital moment. I've loved you for weeks. I just didn't want to scare you by saying it too soon. It's not too soon. Simone laced her fingers through his. Nothing with us has followed any kind of normal timeline. Why start now? True. He brought her hand to his lips. Your mother's going to be okay. Because of you. Because she's stubborn and strong and raised a daughter exactly like her. Julian smiled. Dr. Richardson helped, but she did the hard part. She fought. Simone felt tears well up again. I was so scared, Julian. When Angela called, when I saw her in that bed, all I could think was that I'd wasted so much time. Fighting with her about my choices, defending my career, trying to prove I was right about everything. And none of it mattered. None of it was as important as just loving her. She knows you love her. Does she? Because I'm not sure I ever said it enough. I was so busy being defensive that I forgot to be grateful. Simone's voice broke. What if I'd lost her without ever telling her that she was right about some things? That I needed her wisdom even when I pretended I didn't? That despite all our arguments, she's the strongest person I know. Then you tell her now. Julian squeezed her hand. You tell her every day she's here. You don't waste any more time on pride or defensiveness. You just love her, loudly and obviously, until she's sick of hearing it. When did you get so wise? When I lost my father without saying half the things I needed to say. Julian's voice was rough with old grief. Don't make my mistakes, Simone. Tell her everything. While you still can. They went back to Eleanor's room together. She was awake, watching the news with disdain. "Mama," Simone said, settling into the chair beside her bed. "I need to tell you something. If you're pregnant, now's not the time." "Mama, listen." Simone took her mother's hand. "You were right. About so much. The industry did chew me up. Beauty wasn't enough. I should have had a backup plan. But even though you were right, I'm glad I did it anyway. Because it taught me things I never would have learned in law school. It taught me strength and resilience and how to value myself even when others don't." Eleanor's eyes softened. "Baby. I'm not done. You're the most stubborn, judgmental, impossible woman I've ever known. You've driven me crazy for 39 years. And you're also the bravest, strongest, most loving person I know. Everything good in me, I learned from you. And I'm sorry I never said that enough. I'm sorry I was so busy defending my choices that I forgot to thank you for giving me the foundation to make those choices in the first place." Tears streamed down Eleanor's face. "You're going to make me cry, and that's bad for my heart." "Too bad. You're stuck listening." Simone smiled through her own tears. "I love you, Mama. More than modeling, more than my career, more than proving I was right about anything. I love you. And I'm so grateful you're still here." Eleanor pulled Simone close, or as close as the hospital equipment would allow. "I love you too, baby. So much. And for what it's worth, I'm proud of who you've become. Even if it wasn't the path I wanted for you." Julian watched from the doorway, tears in his own eyes. When Simone finally looked up and saw him there, the love on his face was so clear, so certain, that it took her breath away. Her mother was going to be okay. Julian loved her. She'd finally said the things that needed saying. Everything was terrifying and uncertain and absolutely perfect. When did you last tell someone you loved them while you still had the chance? Don't wait. Tell them today. Drop a red heart below if this touched you. 6 weeks after Eleanor's hospitalization, Simone stood in front of a floor-to-ceiling mirror in the Ashford Digital Media Studio, staring at herself in disbelief. The billboard mock-up behind her was 15 feet tall. Her face, her actual 39-year-old face with its laugh lines and the tiny scar above her eyebrow from a childhood accident, filled the frame. The tagline read, "Beauty doesn't expire. Neither do you." "It's perfect," Julian said from across the studio, but his voice was tight. Simone turned. He was staring at his laptop, jaw clenched, the muscle twitching in the way it did when he was upset but trying to hide it. "What's wrong?" "Nothing. The campaign is brilliant. You're brilliant." But he wouldn't meet her eyes. They'd been doing this dance for 3 days now. Ever since the board meeting where David and the other executives had questioned whether Simone's relationship with Julian compromised the integrity of the campaign. Whether audiences would see her as a legitimate ambassador or just the boss's girlfriend. Julian had defended her fiercely. Pulled out metrics showing her social media engagement had tripled their projections. Showed market research proving audiences responded to her authenticity. Won the argument on every measurable level. But the seed of doubt had been planted. "Julian." Simone crossed the studio, kneeling beside his chair. "Talk to me." He finally looked at her, and the anguish in his eyes made her chest tighten. "What if they're right?" "About what?" "About this compromising everything." Julian gestured between them. "What if people can't separate our personal relationship from your professional value? What if I've made you vulnerable to criticism that you don't deserve? You didn't make me anything. I chose this. Both the job and you. But did you really have a choice?" Julian's voice cracked. "I offered you $300,000 when your career was falling apart. I gave you a platform when you'd been silenced. How much of what you feel for me is real, and how much is gratitude?" Simone sat back on her heels, stunned. "You think I'm with you because you gave me a job? I think the power dynamic is complicated. I think." He ran his hands through his hair. I think I fell in love with you so fast that I didn't stop to consider whether I was putting you in an impossible position. The only impossible position is this conversation. Simone stood, anger flashing through her. Julian, I've spent my entire adult life having men question my motivations. Terrence thought I loved him for his photography connections. Every agent who hit on me assumed I'd sleep with them for better bookings. And now you're questioning whether my feelings are real. That's not what I'm saying. That's exactly what you're saying. Simone's voice rose. You're saying that because you have money and power, I couldn't possibly just love you for who you are. That I'm too weak or too desperate or too calculating to have genuine feelings. Simone. No. She held up her hand. I need some air. She walked out of the studio, through the Ashford digital media offices where employees quickly looked away, pretending they hadn't heard raised voices. Outside, the Charleston afternoon was humid and thick, the air hard to breathe. Her phone rang. Tasha. Hey girl, I'm at your place with dinner. Where are you? Had a fight with Julian. I'm walking. I'll be there soon. 20 minutes later, Simone arrived home to find Tasha on her porch with takeout containers and a bottle of wine. Talk, Tasha commanded, pouring generous glasses. Simone recounted the entire fight. When she finished, Tasha was quiet for a long moment. Can I say something you might not want to hear? Tasha asked carefully. When has that ever stopped you? He's scared. Tasha set down her wine. Julian's scared that he inadvertently manipulated you. That the very things he did out of love, offering you a job, giving you a platform, using his resources to help your mom, might have trapped you in a relationship you feel obligated to maintain. That's ridiculous. Is it? Tasha leaned forward. Simone, you're the most independent woman I know. You've never needed anyone. But these last 2 months, you've needed Julian. For the job, for your mom's medical care, for emotional support during the scariest time of your life. He's questioning whether you can separate the man from the resources. I love him for him. Not his money. I know that. You know that. But does he? Tasha squeezed her hand. This isn't about you proving yourself. It's about him dealing with his own fears about being valued for the wrong reasons. How many women do you think have wanted Julian for his bank account? How many relationships has he questioned because he couldn't be sure if they loved him or his lifestyle? Simone hadn't considered that. She'd been so focused on her own insecurities, the age difference in their experience levels, whether she deserved the job, if she was good enough, that she'd missed Julian fighting his own demons. What do I do? Simone whispered. You go back. You tell him the truth. And you let him feel his feelings without making them about you. Tasha smiled. Love isn't about never fighting. It's about fighting fair and coming back together stronger. Julian was still at the studio when Simone returned an hour later. He sat in the dark, just the glow of the billboard mock-up illuminating his face. When she entered, he looked up, and the hope mixed with fear in his expression broke her heart. I'm sorry, he said immediately. What I said was unfair. Let me talk first. Simone sat beside him. You're right that the power dynamic is complicated. You have resources I don't have. You gave me opportunities when I was desperate. And yes, that complicates things. Julian's face fell. But, Simone continued, taking his hand, complicated doesn't mean wrong. Julian, every relationship has power dynamics. Age, money, experience, education, something always tips the scales. The question isn't whether the dynamic exists. It's whether we're both choosing to be here despite it. How do I know you're choosing me and not what I can provide? How do I know you're choosing me and not just the idea of saving some damsel in distress? Simone countered. How do I know you won't wake up 6 months from now and realize you fell in love with the story of rescuing me more than the reality of who I am? Julian's eyes widened. I would never. Exactly. You would never. Because you see me. The real me. Not the model, not the ambassador, not the woman whose career fell apart. Me. Simone. The person who argues with her mother and eats ice cream for breakfast and cries during commercials about dogs. She cupped his face. And I see you. Not the billionaire, not the company, not the resources. I see Julian. The man who calls his mother every Sunday. Who stress bakes at 2 a.m. Who cried watching your mother's favorite movie last week because it reminded you of your dad. You noticed that? I notice everything about you. Simone smiled through sudden tears. I love you because you make me laugh. Because you listen when I talk. Because you challenge me to be better while never making me feel less than I am. Yes, you helped my mother. Yes, you gave me a job. But Julian, I'd love you if you were a struggling startup founder with nothing but a dream. The money just means we can order better takeout. Julian laughed, a choked sound between a sob and relief. I love you so much. I'm sorry I questioned it. I'm sorry I let my own insecurities make you feel like you had to prove yourself. We're both scared. Simone kissed him softly. Let's be scared together instead of scared alone. He pulled her into his lap, holding her like she was precious. They sat like that for a long time, just breathing together, letting the fear and doubt drain away. The board wants us to address the relationship publicly, Julian finally said. Before the campaign launches. They think transparency is better than letting people speculate. What do you want to do? I want to tell the truth. That I fell in love with an extraordinary woman who happens to be extraordinary at her job. That yes, we're together, and yes, she earned her position on merit. Julian paused. But I'll defer to whatever makes you comfortable. Simone thought about it. The fashion industry had spent 20 years reducing her to her appearance. Now she had the chance to control her own narrative. Let's do it, she said. Let's tell our story our way. 3 days later, they sat for a joint interview with Forbes. The journalist, a sharp woman named Patricia Cole, didn't pull punches. Let's address the elephant in the room, Patricia said. You two are in a relationship, and Mr. Ashford is Ms. Lambert's employer. How do you respond to critics who say this is inappropriate? Julian leaned forward. I'd say they're not entirely wrong that it's complicated. But inappropriate suggests something unethical, and there's nothing unethical about two adults choosing to build both a professional and personal relationship with complete transparency. Ms. Lambert, did you feel pressured to enter a relationship given the professional opportunity? No, Simone said firmly. If anything, the relationship made me hesitant about the job. I didn't want anyone questioning whether I earned my position. But the truth is, I earned it before Julian and I ever kissed. I earned it with 20 years of experience in an industry that tried to erase me. Some critics have suggested you're only the ambassador because of your relationship. Then those critics haven't seen the metrics, Julian interrupted, pulling out his tablet. Since Simone came on board, our engagement rates have increased 400%. We've secured partnerships with 6 major brands. Media coverage has exceeded projections by a factor of 10. Simone isn't succeeding because of our relationship. Our relationship exists despite the complications her success creates. Patricia's eyes gleamed. This was the story she wanted. Mr. Ashford, you've been divorced for 6 years. Why this relationship? Why now? Julian looked at Simone, and the love in his eyes was unmistakable. Because I met someone who reminded me that taking risks is how you build something meaningful. I've spent my career taking risks on companies, on technology, on ideas. Simone made me realize I'd stopped taking risks on people. On connection. On love. And Ms. Lambert, you were rejected by the fashion industry for being too old at 39. Now you're the face of a campaign celebrating age-inclusive beauty while in a relationship with a wealthy entrepreneur. How do you respond to people who say you've simply traded one form of validation for another? Simone took a breath. This was the question that mattered. I'd say they're missing the point, she said carefully. For 20 years, I let the fashion industry define my worth. When they rejected me, I believed them. I thought being told I was too old meant I was too old. But Julian didn't validate me. He reflected back what was already there, value that never depended on anyone else's opinion. She paused. I'm not in this relationship because it makes me feel worthy. I'm in this relationship because I finally understood my worth, and I chose to share my life with someone who sees it too. Patricia nodded slowly. That's a powerful distinction. It's the only distinction that matters, Simone said. The article published 2 days later with the headline, How a Rejected Model and a Billionaire Are Rewriting the Rules of Love and Business. It went viral within hours. The response was overwhelming. Some praised their transparency. Others criticized the power dynamic. Fashion industry insiders dissected every word. But the one thing no one could deny was that people were talking about ageism, about representation, about the intersection of personal and professional relationships in ways they never had before. The campaign launched the following week. Billboards went up in 15 cities. Social media exploded. Simone's face, beautiful, confident, unapologetically 39, was everywhere. And with it, a message that resonated far beyond marketing. Your value doesn't expire. On launch day, Julian took Simone to the rooftop of the Ashford Digital Media Building. Charleston spread out below them, the city glowing in the evening light. I have something for you, Julian said, pulling a small box from his pocket. Simone's heart stopped. Julian, it's not what you think. Not yet. He opened the box to reveal a delicate necklace, a simple pendant engraved with coordinates. This is the exact location where we're standing. Where we launched something bigger than either of us. I wanted you to have a reminder that we built this together. Not boss and employee. Not billionaire and ambassador. Partners. Simone's eyes filled with tears. It's perfect. Julian fastened the necklace around her neck, his fingers lingering on her skin. You're perfect. This is perfect. Even when it's complicated and scary and everyone has an opinion, it's perfect because it's us. I love you, Simone whispered. Thank you for fighting for me. For us. Always. Julian kissed her as the sun set over Charleston, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. This is just the beginning, Simone. We're going to change the world. Below them, somewhere in the city, her mother was at home recovering, growing stronger every day. The campaign they'd built together was reaching millions. And here, on this rooftop with this man, Simone Lambert finally understood what it meant to be valued not for what you looked like or how old you were, but for who you were at your core. She was 39 years old, in love, building something meaningful and absolutely unstoppable. The world had told her she was expired. She was about to prove them spectacularly wrong. Tag someone who needs to hear that their value doesn't expire. Let's build each other up. The scandal broke on a Tuesday morning, 6 weeks after the campaign launch. Simone was at her mother's house, helping Eleanor sort through medications, when her phone started buzzing incessantly. Text after text. Call after call. Her social media notifications went into overdrive. What in the world? Eleanor looked up from her pill organizer. Simone opened Instagram and felt the blood drain from her face. Someone had leaked private emails. Her emails. Messages she'd sent to Rita, her agent, 3 months ago, right after the Lumineer rejection, before she'd met Julian. I'm so tired, Rita. Tired of being told I'm not enough. Tired of fighting. Maybe I should just find some rich man and let him take care of me. At least, then I'd have financial security without having to beg for jobs that don't want me. The caption on the leaked screenshot read, Exposed, age-inclusive beauty ambassador admits she was just looking for a rich man. The Ashford romance was calculated from the start. Oh my God. Simone's hands shook so badly she nearly dropped her phone. The story was everywhere. Gossip sites. Fashion blogs. Even legitimate news outlets were picking it up. The narrative wrote itself. Desperate, aging model manipulates billionaire into relationship for financial security and career opportunity. Her phone rang. Julian. Simone. Where are you? His voice was tight, controlled, but she could hear the tension underneath. At Mama's. Julian, those emails were taken out of context and weaponized. I know. Don't read the comments. Don't engage. I'm handling it. How? How do you handle this? Simone's voice rose. Everyone thinks I'm a gold digger who used you. Then we tell them the truth. But even Julian sounded shaken. Come to the office. We need to strategize. After hanging up, Simone sat frozen, staring at her phone as the notifications kept flooding in. The comments were brutal. I knew she was too good to be true. Poor guy got played by a washed-up model. This is why you don't date employees. She saw dollar signs. She admitted she wanted a rich man. How is anyone surprised? Eleanor grabbed the phone from Simone's hands. Stop reading that poison. Mama, my career is over. Again. The campaign, the partnership, everything Julian and I built, it's all destroyed because I was stupid enough to vent to my agent 3 months ago. Baby, look at me. Eleanor took Simone's face in her hands. You wrote those emails when you were hurting. When you felt worthless and scared. Every woman has had moments where she wondered if giving up and finding security would be easier than fighting. That doesn't make you a gold digger. That makes you human. But everyone thinks. Everyone thinks what they want to think. The question is, what do you know is true? Eleanor's gaze was fierce. Do you love Julian for his money? No. Do you love him at all? More than anything. Then that's your truth. Stand in it. Eleanor released her. Now go to that man and figure out how to weather this storm together. Because that's what love is, standing together when the world tries to tear you apart. The Ashford digital media offices were in chaos when Simone arrived. Employees huddled in corners, whispering. David was on 3 phone calls simultaneously, pacing the hallway. And in the main conference room, Julian stood at the window, his posture rigid. He turned when she entered, and the relief on his face was palpable. He crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled her into his arms. I'm so sorry, he murmured into her hair. I'm so sorry this is happening. It's not your fault. But Simone was trembling. Julian, the board must be furious. The partners. What if this ruins everything you've built? Julian pulled back to look at her. Then it ruins everything I've built. But Simone, you listen to me. I don't care about the company more than I care about you. If I have to choose between Ashford Digital Media and you, I choose you. Every single time. You can't mean that. Watch me. His jaw was set in that stubborn line she'd come to recognize. I've built 3 companies. I can build another. But I can't replace you. David entered, looking haggard. We need to make a statement. Soon. The story is spiraling. What are our options? Julian asked, not releasing Simone. Option 1. Simone releases a statement apologizing, explaining context, tries to do damage control solo. You stay quiet, maintain distance, let her handle the fallout. David looked uncomfortable. Option 2. You both go silent, let the story die naturally, maybe it blows over in a week or 2. Option 3. You make a joint statement defending the relationship, but that keeps the story alive and could make things worse. There's a 4th option, Simone said quietly. Both men looked at her. I resign. Immediately. Remove myself from the campaign, end my contract, eliminate the conflict of interest. You release a statement saying the relationship was inappropriate given the professional dynamic, and we're correcting course. Absolutely not, Julian said flatly. Julian, think about it. If I'm gone, the story loses oxygen. Your company is protected. The campaign can continue with a different ambassador. I said no. Julian's voice was steel. Simone, I'm not throwing you to the wolves to save my reputation. That's not who I am, and that's not who we are. But the company will survive or it won't. But I won't sacrifice you to save it. He turned to David. What would actually kill this story? Not manage it, kill it. David thought for a moment. Honestly, nothing kills it faster than a bigger story. But we don't have control over. He stopped. Unless what? Simone asked. David looked between them. Unless you lean into it. Not defend yourselves, but own the narrative completely. Show people who you really are. I'm listening, Julian said. That documentary crew that's been asking to follow the company for the past year. The one you kept declining because you hate being on camera. David leaned forward. What if you say yes? Let them film everything. Your relationship, the campaign development, how you actually work together. Raw, unfiltered, real. People can't sustain conspiracy theories when they see the mundane reality. That's insane, Simone said. That's brilliant, Julian countered. We show them the truth. Not a carefully crafted statement or a staged interview. The actual truth of who we are. Julian, documentary crews film everything. They'll catch us fighting. Stressed. Making mistakes. Good. Let them see we're real people, not a calculated scheme. Julian took her hands. Simone, I know you value privacy. I know this asks you to be vulnerable in ways you never signed up for. But I think it's the only way to actually change the narrative instead of just responding to it. Simone looked at David. You really think this would work? I think it's risky as hell. But I also think authentic always beats polished. People are tired of perfect. They want real. David pulled up his tablet. The production company is called Verity Films. They do incredible work. If anyone can tell your story fairly, it's them. How long would they film? Simone asked. Probably 3 months for enough material. They'd release it in 6 to 8 months. That's a long time to live under a microscope. Yes, Julian agreed. But Simone, we'd be doing it together. And at the end, people would see us. Really see us. Not the leaked emails or the gossip or the assumptions. Us. Simone thought about the alternative. Hiding. Releasing careful statements. Watching their relationship get dissected by strangers who didn't know them. Or they could take control. Be brave. Show the world exactly who they were and let the chips fall where they may. Okay, she said. Let's do it. Julian's smile was fierce and proud. That's my girl. The announcement went out that afternoon. Ashford Digital Media had agreed to let Verity Films document the company's operations, including the relationship between Julian Ashford and Simone Lambert. Complete transparency. No topic off limits. The response was immediate and divided. Some praised the boldness. Others called it a publicity stunt. But everyone was talking, and the narrative shifted from calculated gold digger to couple willing to prove themselves. The documentary crew arrived the next day. 3 people, a director named Marcus. Simone noted Julian wince at the name. They'd have to use different names in conversation, a cinematographer and a sound person. They were professional, unobtrusive, but ever-present. Just pretend we're not here, the director said cheerfully. That's impossible, Simone muttered, but she tried. The first week was excruciating. Every conversation felt performed. Every touch seemed calculated. Simone and Julian were so aware of being watched that they could barely act natural around each other. This was a terrible idea, Simone said one evening in Julian's apartment, where the crew had finally left them alone for a few hours. Give it time. Julian pulled her onto the couch. We just need to remember who we are when no one's watching. But someone is always watching now. Then we practice being ourselves anyway. He kissed her softly. I love you. That's real. Everything else is just noise. By the second week, something shifted. They stopped noticing the cameras as much. Started having real conversations. The crew captured Simone and Julian working through campaign ideas, laughing over inside jokes, occasionally bickering about stupid things like whether pineapple belonged on pizza. Simone was firmly pro, Julian was horrified. They filmed Simone visiting Eleanor, the two women's relationship complex and loving and completely authentic. They caught Julian stress baking at midnight, Simone teasing him about his perfectionism. They documented strategy meetings where Simone challenged Julian's ideas and he listened, actually listened, adjusting plans based on her input. But they also captured the hard moments. 3 weeks into filming, Simone had a panic attack. She was reading comments on a particularly vicious article when the anxiety overwhelmed her. Chest tight, breath short, the room spinning. Julian found her on the bathroom floor, trembling. The cameras caught him talking her through it, his voice steady and calm, his hands holding hers. Breathe with me, sweetheart. In for 4. Hold for 4. Out for 4. That's it. You're okay. I've got you. I can't do this, Simone gasped between breaths. Julian, it's too much. Everyone hates me. Not everyone. And the ones who do don't know you. He pulled her against his chest. Simone, look at me. You are not what they say you are. You're brilliant and strong and authentic. You don't have to prove anything to anyone. Then why are we doing this documentary? Because we want to. Because we believe in transparency. But baby, if it's too much, we stop. Right now. We send them home, and we deal with the fallout our own way. Simone looked up at him through tears. You'd really do that? Walk away from the strategy we agreed on? In a heartbeat. You're more important than any strategy. And that moment, Julian's willingness to abandon the plan if it hurt her, the raw vulnerability of Simone's panic attack, the genuine love between them, that was what made it real. Later, the director approached them carefully. That was a powerful moment. If you want us to delete it. No, Simone said, surprising herself. Keep it. People should see that I'm not perfect. That this is hard. That even when you're in love and fighting for something meaningful, you still have moments where you fall apart. You sure? Julian asked softly. I'm sure. Simone squeezed his hand. Let them see all of it. The good, the bad, the messy middle. That's the only way they'll believe it's real. 6 weeks into filming, something unexpected happened. The leaked emails story died. Not because of a statement or a defense, but because people watching the documentary footage being released in weekly clips couldn't reconcile the woman in those emails with the woman they saw on screen. Simone wasn't performing. She wasn't trying to be likable. She was just herself, brilliant, flawed, funny, occasionally insecure, deeply in love with a man who challenged her to be better. And Julian wasn't some naive billionaire who'd been manipulated. He was thoughtful, intentional, clearly equal parts in love and in awe of Simone's mind. The narrative shifted again. This time, to something neither of them had expected, inspiration. Women started reaching out. Women in their 30s, 40s, 50s, sharing their own stories of feeling disposable. Of wondering if financial security was worth more than authentic love. Of the complicated intersection between independence and partnership. I wrote emails like that too, one woman commented. After my divorce, I was so tired of struggling alone that I thought maybe finding someone with money would be easier than fighting to rebuild. But I fell in love with a schoolteacher who makes me laugh. Love isn't about easy. It's about real. The comments multiplied. The conversation expanded. And suddenly, Simone and Julian weren't just defending their relationship. They were part of a larger movement about redefining worth, value, and what it meant to build a partnership in a world obsessed with transactions. On the last day of filming, the director asked them one final question. If you could go back to that moment, Simone writing those emails, Julian sending that first message, would you do anything differently? Simone and Julian looked at each other. They'd been through hell. Public scrutiny. Private doubts. Moments of breaking and rebuilding. No, they said simultaneously, then laughed. Even knowing how hard it would be, the director pressed. Especially knowing how hard it would be, Julian said, pulling Simone close. Because the hard parts taught us that we could weather anything together. And that's worth every difficult moment. What he said. Simone agreed, kissing his cheek. We're not perfect. We're just real. And real is harder and better and more worth fighting for than anything perfect could ever be. The cameras finally turned off. The crew packed up. And in the quiet of Julian's apartment that night, Simone and Julian sat on the couch, exhausted and relieved and more certain than ever. We did it, Simone whispered. We survived the worst of it. We did more than survive, Julian corrected, tilting her chin up to look at him. We showed the world exactly who we are. And Simone, I've never been more proud of anything in my life. Not even your 3 successful companies. Not even close. He kissed her softly. You're my greatest accomplishment. Not because I built you or saved you, but because I was smart enough to see you and brave enough to love you. Simone felt tears slide down her cheeks. I love you. Even when it's complicated and public and harder than anything I've ever done, I love you. Good. Julian murmured against her lips. Because I'm not letting you go. Ever. Outside, Charleston settled into evening. Somewhere, the documentary was being edited into something that would change both their lives again. The campaign continued. The world kept turning. But here, in this moment, they were just 2 people who'd found each other in the chaos and decided to hold on tight. The darkest hour had passed. And on the other side was something brighter than either of them had imagined possible. Have you ever had to prove your truth to people who wanted to believe the worst? Drop your story below. You're not alone. Thought balloon flexed biceps. 3 months after the documentary finished filming, Julian disappeared. Not literally. He was still at the office, still taking calls, still showing up for meetings. But the Julian part of him, the man who texted Simone good morning with terrible puns, who showed up at her door with her favorite lemon cake just because, who'd hold her hand under conference tables during stressful meetings, that Julian had retreated somewhere Simone couldn't reach. He's planning something, Tasha said over coffee one Saturday morning. Men get weird when they're planning something big. Or he's realized this whole thing is too complicated and he's pulling away. Simone stirred her coffee absently. We barely see each other anymore. He's working late every night. Won't tell me what he's doing. Have you asked him directly? Every time I try, he changes the subject or tells me he's handling business stuff. Simone's voice cracked. Tasha, what if the documentary made him realize how messy this all is? What if he's having second thoughts? That man looks at you like you hung the moon. He's not having second thoughts. But Simone wasn't convinced. The distance had started small, a cancelled dinner here, a shortened phone call there. Now it had been 5 days since she'd actually seen Julian in person. 5 days of excuses and postponements and the growing certainty that something was wrong. Her phone buzzed. Finally, a text from Julian. Can you come to the warehouse district tonight? 7 p.m. Corner of Columbus and Lawrence. Come alone. Simone stared at the cryptic message. The warehouse district was mostly abandoned buildings awaiting renovation. Why would Julian want to meet there? Is everything okay? Please trust me. Just come. Wear something comfortable. That's not ominous at all, Tasha said, reading over Simone's shoulder. Should I be worried? Honestly, I think you should be excited. Tasha grinned. But also maybe tell someone where you're going, just in case your billionaire boyfriend is secretly a serial killer. At 6:45 p.m., Simone pulled up to the address Julian had sent. The warehouse district was quiet, most buildings dark. But one structure at the corner blazed with light, every window glowing warm and golden in the twilight. Simone's heart hammered as she approached. The door was unlocked, and when she pushed it open, her breath caught. The warehouse had been transformed. What had been an empty industrial space was now filled with her life. Photographs blown up to enormous sizes covered every wall. But these weren't modeling shots. These were moments Simone had forgotten existed. Her at age 7, gap-toothed and grinning, holding a trophy from a spelling bee. At 13, awkward and gangly, standing with her father outside their home in Atlanta. At 19, the day she arrived in New York, eyes full of dreams and terror. Throughout her 20s, shots from campaigns, yes, but also candid moments, laughing with other models backstage, helping a young photographer set up equipment, standing alone on a rooftop watching the sunrise after a long shoot. And then the recent photos. Her and Julian on the plane to New York. At the hospital with her mother. Working late in the office, heads bent together over a laptop. Walking through Charleston holding hands. Every private moment she'd thought was just theirs, captured somehow with love and intention. "How did you?" Simone whispered, turning in a slow circle. "I called in every favor I had." Julian's voice came from behind her, and she spun to find him standing there in jeans and a soft blue sweater, looking nervous and hopeful and absolutely perfect. "Your mother gave me the childhood photos. Tasha tracked down friends from your early career. The documentary crew shared their raw footage. I wanted you to see yourself the way I see you. Julian, this is..." Simone couldn't find words. Tears streamed down her face as she took in the exhibition of her own life. "This is why I've been distant," Julian said, stepping closer. "I've been working on this every spare moment for 3 months. I know I should have told you, but I wanted it to be a surprise. I wanted you to walk in here and see what I see, that your value never depended on whether the fashion industry wanted you. It depended on you being exactly who you are." He took her hand, leading her deeper into the warehouse. At the center of the space stood a small platform. On it, a single photograph, the billboard from their campaign launch. "Beauty doesn't expire. Neither do you. When we launched this campaign, I thought we were changing how the world sees aging," Julian said. "But Simone, you changed how I see everything. You taught me that real value isn't about what you can produce or how you look or meeting anyone's expectations. It's about showing up as yourself, flaws and fears and all, and choosing to be brave anyway." He turned to face her fully, and Simone saw he was trembling. "I was going to do this differently," Julian continued. "Something private and intimate. But then I realized, we've never been private. From the moment I sent that first email, our relationship has been public, scrutinized, questioned. So I wanted to do this in a way that honors that. In a way that says I'm not afraid of the world watching us anymore." Julian dropped to one knee. Simone's hands flew to her mouth. "Oh my God. Simone Lambert." Julian pulled out a small velvet box, opening it to reveal a stunning ring, a deep blue sapphire surrounded by diamonds. "This sapphire is from Sri Lanka. It's 4 billion years old, which means it existed long before humans invented the concept of age, or expiration dates, or any of the nonsense that tried to tell you your time was up." His voice cracked with emotion. "I chose it because I want you to remember that true value is timeless. Like this stone. Like you." Simone was sobbing now, unable to speak. "I know this is fast by conventional standards. I know we've only known each other for 6 months. I know that people will have opinions about this too, about whether it's real or right or whatever else they want to question." Julian's eyes never left hers. "But I also know that I want to spend every remaining day of my life proving that love isn't about timelines or meeting other people's expectations. It's about choosing someone and keeping that choice every single day." He paused, taking a shaky breath. "I'm choosing you, Simone. I'll choose you when you're 40 and 50 and 90. I'll choose you on the days you're strong and the days you fall apart. I'll choose you when the world celebrates us and when it criticizes us. I'm choosing you forever, if you'll let me. Yes, Simone gasped. Yes, yes, yes. But Julian wasn't finished. Wait, there's more. How could there possibly be more? Simone laughed through her tears. Because I know you, and I know you're going to worry about what people will say. About whether this proves the cynics right, that you were after financial security all along. Julian stood, still holding the ring. So I had my lawyers draw up papers. A prenup that protects everything I had before we met. And more than that, I'm putting half of Ashford Digital Media in your name. Not as my fiancé. As my partner. Because you've built this company as much as I have over the last 6 months, and I want it to be legally recognized that you're not my employee or my ambassador. You're my equal. Simone stared at him in shock. Julian, that's insane. The company is worth hundreds of millions. And you've helped make it worth that much. Simone, I don't want you to marry me wondering if you're financially dependent. I don't want you to ever feel trapped or obligated. I want you to choose me knowing you could walk away tomorrow and be completely fine. He cupped her face. I want you to say yes because you love me, not because you need me. So I'm making sure those things are separate. You're giving me half your company so I can say no? I'm giving you half the company you helped build so you can freely say yes. Julian smiled through his own tears. So what do you say, Simone Lambert? Will you marry me? Simone looked around at the warehouse full of her own story, at this man who'd spent 3 months building a monument to her worth, who'd legally ensured she could never be accused of being a gold digger, who loved her so completely that he wanted to remove every barrier to her saying yes. You beautiful, ridiculous, extraordinary man, she whispered. Of course I'll marry you. Julian's face split into the most radiant smile Simone had ever seen. He slid the ring onto her finger, a perfect fit, because of course he'd somehow figured out her size without her knowing, and then lifted her off her feet, spinning her around while they both laughed and cried. When he finally set her down, he kissed her like she was oxygen and he'd been drowning. Simone melted into him, pouring every ounce of love and gratitude and joy into that kiss. I love you, Julian murmured against her lips. I love you so much it terrifies me. Good, Simone said, echoing his words from months ago. Let's be terrified together. A sound made them both turn. From the shadows of the warehouse, people emerged. Her mother Eleanor, wiping tears. Tasha, filming on her phone and openly sobbing. David, grinning like an idiot. Julian's mother Patricia, clutching tissues. Rita, her agent. And behind them, at least 50 more people. Employees from Ashford Digital Media, friends Simone had made over her career, people from their lives who'd been hidden, watching the whole proposal. You couldn't let me do this privately? Simone laughed, not really caring. You said it yourself in the documentary, Julian reminded her. Real is better than perfect. And real means including the people who love us in our biggest moments. Eleanor pushed through the crowd, pulling Simone into a fierce hug. I was wrong about him, she whispered. So wrong. Baby, don't you dare let this one go. Wasn't planning on it, Mama. Good. Because if you did, I'd marry him myself. Eleanor pulled back, laughing. That man spent 3 months calling me every week to ask about your childhood, to understand who you were before the world tried to change you. He loves you, Simone. Really loves you. Tasha was next, nearly tackling Simone with her enthusiasm. I knew it. I told you he was planning something big. But this, she gestured around the warehouse, this is beyond anything I imagined. The celebration that followed was spontaneous and perfect. Someone had brought champagne. Someone else had food. Music played from speakers Simone hadn't noticed. And for hours, they celebrated not just an engagement, but the culmination of a love story that had defied every expectation. Later, when most of the guests had left and it was just Simone, Julian, and a few close friends, David pulled Julian aside. You know the documentary releases next week, David said quietly. This proposal is going to make that launch even bigger. Good, Julian said, watching Simone laugh with her mother. Let people see all of it. The struggle, the scrutiny, and the fact that we chose each other anyway. That's the whole point. David shook his head, smiling. You're either the bravest man I know or the craziest. Why not both? Julian clinked his glass against David's. Love makes you crazy and brave in equal measure. As midnight approached, Julian and Simone finally found themselves alone on the warehouse rooftop, looking out over Charleston's twinkling lights. I still can't believe you did all this, Simone said, leaning against him. The photos, the proposal, the company shares. Julian, it's too much. It's not nearly enough. He wrapped his arms around her from behind. Simone, I spent my entire adult life building companies, making money, achieving things. And none of it meant anything until you. You made me remember why I started all of this. To create something meaningful. To make a difference. To use my resources for more than just accumulating more resources. You're going to make me cry again. Then cry. I'll be here. He kissed the top of her head. Always. Simone turned in his arms, studying his face in the moonlight. What happens now? After the documentary releases, after we're officially engaged, after all the attention and scrutiny and opinions. Now we live our lives. We build our company. We keep fighting for representation and authenticity and all the things that matter. Julian smiled. We get married. We grow old together. We prove that love doesn't have expiration dates, and neither do we. That simple. That simple. That complicated. That perfect. He kissed her softly. Ready. For what? For everything. The documentary release. The wedding. The rest of our lives. All of it. Every weekend, they hosted video calls with groups of applicants, learning their stories. There was Marcus and Chen. No, they decided, those names were too common, they'd have to vary them in the final cut. There was Robert and James, together for 23 years, finally able to marry now that Robert's conservative family had reconciled. There was Maria, 57, marrying for the first time after spending her life caring for aging parents. There was the couple who'd met at 60, both widowed, both convinced their chance at love had passed. Each story was different. Each story was the same. People told they were too old, too late, too expired. People who'd found love anyway. We're not the heroes of this story, Simone realized one night, reviewing footage of couple interviews. We're just the spark. They're the fire. Good, Julian said. That's exactly what I hoped for. 2 weeks before the ceremony, a complication arose. A major fashion magazine, one that had rejected Simone multiple times, wanted to cover the wedding. Exclusive access. Cover story. Potentially millions in publicity. Absolutely not, Julian said immediately when his PR team presented the offer. Wait, Simone interrupted. What are they offering? $2 million for exclusive rights, the PR director said. But you'd have to limit other media access, control the narrative. We give them access, Simone said firmly. But we don't take their money. Everyone stared at her. Instead, they donate $2 million to the foundation. They get their cover story, but they don't get to own our narrative. We control how we're portrayed. They cover the wedding as one of 500 love stories, not as celebrity billionaire ceremony. Simone looked at Julian. This wedding isn't about us. If they want to cover it, they cover all of it. Or none of it. The magazine agreed. And something shifted in the industry. Suddenly, other publications wanted in. Not as exclusive coverage, but as contributors. Someone donated flowers. Someone else donated cake. A dress designer offered to create gowns for any bride who couldn't afford one. A suit rental company did the same for grooms. The wedding that wasn't supposed to be about money became a testament to generosity. 3 days before the ceremony, Simone tried on her dress. Not a custom designer gown, but a simple ivory dress from a Charleston boutique that specialized in vintage-inspired designs. It cost $300. It was perfect. "You look beautiful," Eleanor said, tears streaming down her face. "Baby, I know this isn't the wedding we planned when you were little. But it's better. So much better." "You really think so, Mama?" "I know so." Eleanor adjusted the simple flower crown in Simone's hair. "You're not just getting married. You're creating space for 500 other people to believe love is possible. That's bigger than any fairy tale." The night before the wedding, Simone couldn't sleep. She stood on Julian's balcony, looking out over Charleston, trying to process that tomorrow, everything would change. Julian found her there at 2 a.m. Second thoughts. No. Just overwhelmed. Simone leaned into him. "Tomorrow we get married in front of thousands of people. Tomorrow we launch a foundation. Tomorrow we officially merge our lives completely. It's a lot. We can still call it off. Do something smaller. Just us." "I don't want smaller." Simone turned to face him. "Julian, I spent 20 years making myself smaller. Smaller body, smaller personality, smaller dreams. I'm done with small. I want big. I want meaningful. I want our wedding to matter beyond just us. Then that's what we'll have." He kissed her forehead. "But Simone, in all the bigness tomorrow, promise me one thing." "What?" "Promise me we'll have one moment that's just ours. Where we tune out the crowds and the cameras and the world, and we just see each other. Where we remember why we're doing this." "I promise." Simone kissed him softly. "I love you, Julian. Thank you for making me believe I could have both, the grand gesture and the intimate moment. The public commitment and the private connection. Thank you for teaching me that changing the world starts with changing one person's world." Julian pulled her close. "Tomorrow, we change 500 worlds. But tonight, you're my whole world." They went to bed holding each other, two people on the edge of something extraordinary. The next morning, Simone woke to find Julian gone. A note on his pillow read, "Gone to set up. See you at sunset. Try not to be late to our own wedding. I love you. Jay." Simone smiled, feeling oddly calm despite the magnitude of what was about to happen. Eleanor and Tasha arrived at noon to help her get ready, but there was surprisingly little to do. Hair in soft waves. Minimal makeup. The simple dress. The vintage flower crown. "You look like yourself," Tasha said approvingly. "Not like a bride trying to be someone else." At 5 p.m., they drove to Waterfront Park. And Simone's breath caught. The park had been transformed. Not into something elaborate or expensive, but into something achingly beautiful. Simple white chairs arranged in a massive circle. Wildflowers everywhere, not formal arrangements, but bunches and bunches of daisies and sunflowers and black-eyed Susans, the kind that grew in fields and didn't cost a fortune. String lights crisscrossing overhead. And in the center, a circular platform where all 500 couples would take turns saying their vows. But the most stunning part was the people. 500 couples. 1,000 people. Ages ranging from 35 to 87. Every race, every gender expression, every body type. Some in formal wear, others in simple sundresses or khakis. Some with elaborate makeup and styled hair, others completely natural. Some couples holding hands nervously, others kissing like they couldn't wait another second. All of them there because they believed love didn't have an expiration date. "Oh my God," Simone whispered. "This is really happening." "This is really happening," Eleanor confirmed, squeezing her daughter's hand. "You ready, baby?" "More than ready." The ceremony started at sunset. An officiant welcomed everyone, speaking about love and commitment and the arbitrary timeline society imposed on both. Then couples began taking turns on the platform, saying their vows. Each couple got 2 minutes. Some were funny. Some were tearful. All were authentic. When it was finally Simone and Julian's turn, they climbed onto the platform holding hands. The crowd, now swelled to thousands of onlookers beyond the ceremony participants, went silent. Julian spoke first. Simone Lambert, 6 months ago you walked into my office and challenged every assumption I had about business, about love, about what it means to build something meaningful. You were supposed to be an employee. You became my partner. You were supposed to be a campaign. You became my purpose. You were supposed to be temporary. You became forever. Simone's eyes filled with tears. Julian Ashford, 6 months ago I thought my time was up. The industry had rejected me. My worth felt tied to things I could no longer control. And then, you saw me, really saw me, and reminded me that value doesn't expire. You didn't save me. You reflected back what was already there. And for that, I'll spend the rest of my life grateful. They exchanged rings, simple bands engraved with coordinates. Not of where they met or got engaged, but of where they were standing right now. This moment. This commitment. I choose you, they said in unison, the words they'd written together. Not because you're perfect, but because you're real. Not because it's easy, but because it's worth it. Not until death do us part, but until death makes us legends of how to love without limits. The officiant pronounced them married, and they kissed as the sun set over Charleston Harbor, painting the sky in impossible shades of pink and gold. But they weren't alone in that kiss. Around them, 500 other couples were kissing their partners. 1,000 people choosing love. Celebrating commitment. Proving that age was just a number and expiration dates were a myth. The reception was unlike anything Simone could have imagined. Not a traditional sit-down dinner, but food trucks and picnic blankets and dancing under the stars. Couples mingled, sharing stories, celebrating not just their own love but each other's. At midnight, Julian pulled Simone away from the crowd. They walked to the edge of the harbor, where the water reflected city lights like scattered stars. We did it, he said. We actually did it. We did more than get married, Simone replied. We started a revolution. Think it'll last? The foundation will. The movement will. The change we sparked will. She smiled up at him. And us? We'll last forever. Julian kissed his wife, with the Charleston skyline behind them and the future stretching wide open ahead. They were married. They were partners. They were proof that love didn't care about timelines or expectations or what anyone thought was too late. They were just beginning. If you could rewrite the rules of your own love story, what would you change? Tell us below. 5 years later. Simone Lambert Ashford woke to the sound of rain against windows and her husband's soft snoring beside her. She smiled, studying Julian's face in the gray morning light. At 44, he had silver threading through his hair at the temples. Laugh lines had deepened around his eyes. He was somehow more handsome than the day they'd met, aged like the 4-billion-year-old sapphire on her finger, gaining depth and character with time. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text from Tasha. Turn on CBS Sunday morning. Now. Simone carefully extracted herself from Julian's embrace and padded to the living room of their Charleston home, not the apartment Julian had owned before, but a renovated historic house they'd chosen together. One with a garden for Eleanor, who'd moved into the guest house 2 years ago after deciding retirement was boring and she'd rather help run the foundation. Simone turned on the TV just as the segment began. 5 years ago, a documentary called Expired, the Ashford Lambert story sparked a global conversation about ageism, beauty standards, and the price of being told your time is up, the correspondent's voice narrated over footage from the mass wedding. Today, the Lambert Ashford Foundation has expanded to 38 countries, helping over 50,000 people fight age discrimination in employment, healthcare, and housing. The segment cut to interviews. Women who'd found jobs after being rejected for years. Couples who'd gotten married through the Foundation's ongoing commitment ceremony program. A 72-year-old man who'd started his dream business with Foundation support after being forced into early retirement. Then Simone's face filled the screen. Not from 5 years ago, but from last month. She'd given a TED Talk titled, The Myth of Expiration Dates. "We're taught that everything has a shelf life," on-screen Simone said. "Milk, bread, beauty, relevance, worth. But here's what I learned: expiration dates are marketing. They're designed to make you throw away things that are still good, still valuable, still necessary. Women are not yogurt. We don't spoil with time. We mature. We deepen. We become more of who we always were." The audience had erupted in applause. Simone remembered that moment, standing on the red circle, 44 years old in a burgundy suit, her natural hair in locks now, her face showing every year she'd lived, and feeling more powerful than she'd ever felt at 25. "Watching yourself on TV without coffee should be illegal," Julian's voice came from behind her. He wrapped his arms around her waist, resting his chin on her shoulder. "Though you do look gorgeous giving that talk." "We look old," Simone said, not with sadness but with wonder. "We look lived in," Julian corrected. "There's a difference." The segment continued, showing the Ashford digital media offices. The company had tripled in size, becoming a leader in authentic representation across all media. But more than that, it had changed industry standards. 11 major corporations had adopted age-inclusive hiring practices directly influenced by their model. "Mr. Ashford, some critics initially claimed your relationship with Ms. Lambert Ashford compromised the company's integrity," a reporter's voice asked off-screen. "How do you respond now?" Julian appeared, interviewed in their office. "I'd say those critics fundamentally misunderstood what integrity means. Integrity isn't about avoiding complicated relationships. It's about being transparent about them. Simone and I built something extraordinary together, both personally and professionally. The fact that we did it while in love doesn't diminish the work. It enhances it. Your wife has said you see each other as equals. But given the power dynamics, your wealth, your initial position as her employer, how did you ensure true equality?" "By legally ensuring it," Julian said. "Simone owns 50% of Ashford Digital Media. She has equal say in every decision. But more than that, equality isn't about identical circumstances. It's about mutual respect, shared power, and the willingness to be challenged. Simone challenges me daily. That's not a bug. It's the entire point." The segment ended with footage from their wedding, but also from the 4 subsequent annual mass ceremonies the foundation had hosted. Thousands of couples. All over 35. All proving that love didn't care about society's timelines. "They didn't even mention the really big news," Julian said, turning off the TV. "That's tomorrow's announcement." Simone turned in his arms. "You ready for this? To tell the world my brilliant wife is pregnant at 44? Terrified and thrilled in equal measure." Simone's hand instinctively went to her stomach, still flat, hiding the 10-week secret they'd been keeping. They'd tried for 3 years before accepting it might not happen. Had made peace with that. Started adoption paperwork. And then, a positive test 2 months ago. Shocking. Unexpected. Perfect. "The headlines are going to be insufferable," Simone said. "Geriatric pregnancy. High-risk birth. All the fear-mongering about women daring to have babies after 35. "Let them write their headlines," Julian said fiercely. "We'll write our own story. Like we always have." A knock on the door interrupted them. Eleanor let herself in. She'd long ago stopped waiting for invitations, carrying a basket of fresh-baked muffins. "Saw the segment," she announced. "You two looked good. Old, but good." "Thanks, Mama," Simone said dryly. "I mean it as a compliment. You look like you've lived. Like you've earned every year on your faces." Eleanor set down the muffins. "Now, are you going to tell me why you asked me to come over for breakfast, or do I have to guess?" Simone and Julian exchanged glances. They'd planned to wait, to do something elaborate. But this felt right. Simple, intimate, real. "You're going to be a grandmother," Simone said softly. Eleanor froze. Then her face crumpled, and she pulled Simone into a fierce hug, both women crying and laughing simultaneously. A baby, Eleanor whispered. Oh baby, a baby. When? How? Are you okay? Is everything healthy? 10 weeks. Completely by surprise. And yes, everything's perfect so far. Simone pulled back to look at her mother. Mama, I'm 44. This is considered high risk. There will be complications, extra monitoring, people telling me I'm too old. And you'll handle it like you've handled everything else, Eleanor interrupted. By proving them wrong and doing it spectacularly. She grabbed Julian, pulling him into the hug. Both of you. You're going to be spectacular parents. They spent the morning like that, the three of them around the kitchen table, making plans, discussing names, Eleanor sharing stories of Simone's childhood. It was ordinary and extraordinary in equal measure. At noon, Tasha arrived, followed by David and his husband Marcus. They'd finally agreed to use common names, it was too exhausting to avoid them. Then Patricia, Julian's mother, flew in from Connecticut. By evening, their home was filled with the people who mattered most, celebrating not just the baby, but the life Simone and Julian had built. Speech. David called out. The parents-to-be need to say something. Julian stood, pulling Simone up with him. They faced their family, chosen and blood, complicated and perfect. 5 years ago, Julian began, Simone walked into my life and changed everything. I thought I was offering her a job. She gave me a purpose. I thought I was helping her rebuild after rejection. She taught me what it means to be truly seen. 5 years ago, Simone continued, I thought my life was over. My career had rejected me. My worth felt attached to things I could no longer control. And then this man, she squeezed Julian's hand, reminded me that endings are just beginnings in disguise. We've built a company, Julian said. Started a foundation. Changed policies. Gotten married in front of 500 other couples. Been interviewed, scrutinized, criticized, celebrated. But the most important thing we did, Simone added, was choose each other. Every single day. When it was easy and when it was hard. When the world was watching and when it was just us. We chose love over fear. Partnership over perfection. Real over easy. And now we get to choose this, Julian said, his hand joining Simone's on her stomach. To bring a child into a world we're actively making better. To raise someone who'll never question whether they're too old or too young or too anything. To show them that life doesn't have expiration dates, it just has chapters, and you write your own story. The room erupted in cheers and tears and toasts. Later that night, after everyone had left and the house was quiet again, Simone and Julian lay in bed, her head on his chest, his hand on her stomach. Scared? He asked softly. Terrified, she admitted. I'm 44. Pregnancy at this age is risky. The baby could have complications. I could have complications. We might lose. Her voice broke. We might, Julian agreed, not offering false comfort. But Simone, we might also have a healthy, beautiful baby who grows up knowing they were wanted beyond reason. Who sees their mother as proof that women don't expire. Who learns from their father that changing the world starts with how you treat one person. You think we'll be good parents. I think we'll be real parents. Which is the only kind worth being. Julian kissed her forehead. And whatever happens, if this pregnancy works out or doesn't, if we become parents biologically or through adoption or in ways we haven't imagined yet, we'll do it together. Like everything else. Simone was quiet for a moment. Then she said, read me the messages. Julian knew exactly what she meant. He reached for his phone, pulling up the folder where he saved messages from people whose lives had been touched by their story. This one's from yesterday, he said, beginning to read. Dear Simone and Julian, I'm 57. I divorced 10 years ago and convinced myself romance was over for me. Then I saw your documentary. Last month, I went on my first date in a decade. Tonight, he proposed. We're getting married at next year's foundation ceremony. Thank you for reminding me it's never too late. Signed, Margaret from Ohio. Another one from this morning, Julian continued. I'm 36. I was just fired from my job and told I'm overqualified for positions I'm applying for. Your TED Talk reminded me that I'm not the problem. The system is. I'm starting my own company. Thank you for the courage. Signed, David from Texas. He read message after message. People who'd found love. Started businesses. Went back to school. Had babies. Adopted children. Changed careers. Stood up to discrimination. All because they'd seen Simone and Julian prove that life didn't end when society said it should. We did that, Simone whispered, tears streaming down her face. We helped people believe in second chances. We did more than that, Julian said. We lived proof that the best parts of life often come after you're told your time is up. That 40 is not old. That 50 is not finished. That 60 is not done. That every age is just another chapter, not a countdown to irrelevance. Simone turned to face him fully. Julian Ashford, 5 years ago you sent me an email that changed my life. Do you remember what it said? I believe you'd be perfect for a project I'm developing, Julian recited. I've reread that email 1,000 times, wondering what would have happened if you'd said no. I almost did, Simone admitted. I thought it was too good to be true. Thought you were too good to be true. I was so convinced I wasn't allowed to have good things anymore. And now I know that good things don't have expiration dates either. She kissed him softly. Now I know that the best parts of my life, you, this marriage, the foundation, the baby we're going to have, all came after the world told me I was finished. Now I know that I'm not expired. I'm perfectly aged. Julian's laugh was watery with emotion. Like a fine wine. Like a 4-billion-year-old sapphire, Simone corrected, holding up her hand to watch her engagement ring catch the lamplight. Timeless. Valuable. Only getting better with age. They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, two people who'd found love when the world said it was too late and built an empire proving the world wrong. 18 months later. Simone stood at the podium in the United Nations Assembly Hall, their daughter. Zara, named after Simone's grandmother, asleep in a wrap carrier against her chest. She was 46 now. Her body bore stretch marks from pregnancy, softer curves from nursing, and she'd never felt more powerful. I was told I was too old at 39, Simone said into the microphone, her voice steady and strong. Too old to model. Too old for love. Too old to matter. I was told that my expiration date had passed, and I should gracefully exit the stage to make room for younger, fresher faces. She paused, looking out at representatives from 193 countries. But here's what happened when I refused to accept that expiration date. I fell in love. I built a company. I started a foundation that's helped over 100,000 people worldwide. I gave a TED Talk that's been viewed 40 million times. I got married at 40. I had a baby at 45. Simone's voice strengthened. I did all the things I was told I was too old to do. And I did them better than I could have at 25 because I had experience, perspective, and the hard-won knowledge of my own worth. The assembly erupted in applause. Today, the Lambert Ashford Foundation is proposing a global initiative, Simone continued. The Age Equality Act, a framework for protecting workers over 35 from discrimination, ensuring equal access to healthcare regardless of age, and changing societal narratives around aging. We're not asking for special treatment. We're demanding equal treatment. Because human value doesn't diminish with birthdays. It accumulates. She spoke for 20 more minutes, outlining the initiative, presenting research, making the case that age discrimination wasn't just morally wrong, it was economically stupid. That societies that valued experience alongside youth would thrive. That the future required both innovation and wisdom. When she finished, the assembly stood. A standing ovation that lasted 5 minutes. Backstage, Julian waited with Zara's diaper bag and a bottle. "You were magnificent." "We were magnificent," Simone corrected, kissing him. "This was always us. Together." Zara stirred, making the small sounds that meant she was waking up. Simone lifted her from the carrier, and Julian took her, cradling their daughter with the practiced ease of a father who'd done 2 a.m. feedings and diaper changes with equal partnership. "She has your eyes," Julian said, staring down at Zara. "Brown and infinite and seeing right through people's nonsense." "She has your stubborn chin," Simone countered. "She's going to be a force." "She's going to change the world," Julian agreed. "Just like her mother." They left the UN building hand in hand, their daughter between them. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. But Simone and Julian just walked forward, toward the car, toward home, toward the future they'd built from the ashes of what everyone said was impossible. That night, after Zara was asleep and the apartment was quiet, Simone stood at the window of their New York pied-a-terre, looking out over the city that had once rejected her. Julian found her there, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "What are you thinking?" he asked. "That I'm 46 years old. That I have gray hair and stretch marks and wrinkles. That my body is different than it was at 25. Simone smiled. "And that I've never been more beautiful, because now beauty means something real. It means survival, strength, the courage to stand on a UN stage and demand change." "You are beautiful," Julian agreed. "But more than that, you're important. You matter. And nothing, not age, not time, not anyone's opinion, will ever change that." "We matter," Simone corrected. "This work we're doing, this life we're building, this daughter we're raising. It all matters because we decided it would. Because we refused to accept expiration dates." She turned in his arms, looking up at the man who'd seen her worth when she'd forgotten it herself. "Thank you," she whispered. "For that first email. For choosing me. For building this life with me. For proving that the best love stories don't follow timelines, they create them." "Thank you," Julian replied, "for taking a chance on a billionaire who'd forgotten why he was building companies. For reminding me that success without meaning is just noise. For showing me that partnership means both people being equally powerful. For giving me everything I didn't know I needed." They kissed as New York twinkled below them, a city of second chances and reinvention, exactly like them. Somewhere in the world, a woman was being told she was too old. Somewhere, a person was accepting an expiration date they'd been given. Somewhere, someone was forgetting their worth. But also somewhere, a woman was watching Simone's UN speech and remembering she had value. Somewhere, a couple was getting married at 50, 60, 70, proving it's never too late. Somewhere, a person was standing up to age discrimination, armed with the knowledge that expiration dates were fiction. The ripples spread outward, touching lives Simone and Julian would never meet, changing a world that desperately needed changing. And at the center of it all, a love story that had defied every expectation. Because Simone Lambert Ashford had been rejected for being too old at 39. And a billionaire had fought for her heart. And together, they'd proven that endings were just beginnings waiting to be claimed. That love didn't follow timelines. That value didn't expire. That the best chapters of life often came after the world said, "The end." They were 46 and 44 and just getting started. And they were absolutely, perfectly, beautifully unstoppable. Your worth doesn't have an expiration date. Your dreams don't expire. Your chance at love doesn't run out. You are exactly the age you're supposed to be, with exactly the experience you need, at exactly the right time. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Tag someone who's been told they're too old for their dreams. Let's remind each other that we're not expired, we're perfectly aged. What dream have you been putting off because you think you're too old? Drop it in the comments. Let this be your permission to start anyway.
Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.